After I announced the lottery, the sandwich sales took off and my reputation points kept climbing. Once I hit 2,000, I broke through to a second-rank magic warrior. My battle energy and magic power more than doubled, and my body got way stronger. I could beat my old self in 10 moves. But reaching the next rank would take 12,000 points, so I had a long way to go. The line outside stretched for hundreds of meters. I had 100 jars of jam, but needed to save 10 for prizes, so the rest made about 1,200 sandwiches. They sold out in an hour and a half, and there were still hundreds of people waiting. I told everyone the bread was gone for the day, but the drawing would start in 15 minutes. Some people asked me to just sell the tickets, but that wouldn't earn me any reputation, so I refused. People started reselling their extra tickets to each other for 50 copper coins each, way more than the original price. The whole event drew over 20,000 people. Most couldn't afford the bread, but everyone wanted to see the dragon meat. I used levitation magic to float 2 meters up so the crowd could see me, and started calling out the third prize winners. 30 people won snowflake cakes. I was surprised. Each winner actually gave me reputation points. That meant I should do more of these drawings, since different winners would keep generating points, unlike the cakes people got tired of. Then I drew 10 second prize winners who each got a jar of jam. The 2 rounds together earned me 110 reputation points. Finally came the grand prize. I used amplification magic so everyone could hear me, reached slowly into the box, and pulled out a slip. Number 7. That's when things went sideways. 5 people rushed forward, all holding tickets that said 7, all with handwriting that looked exactly like mine. The crowd was confused. Someone in the audience named Levitt was smirking, and a guy called Dewey told his sister this would be fun to watch. People started demanding an explanation. If I couldn't sort this out, I'd have to give away 5 prizes. But I already knew the answer. Every real ticket had been treated with a magic potion that I could see glowing like a lantern in the dark. I grabbed the wrist of the real winner and held up his ticket. When one of the fakers protested, I turned to face him and told the whole crowd I'd explain exactly why his ticket was fake. I told the crowd that every ticket had been infused with my magic energy, like a fingerprint no one could copy. The 4 fakers froze. They hadn't expected me to catch on so fast. They figured I wouldn't do anything to them in front of so many people, maybe just scold them a little. They were wrong. I pulled out my wand, lifted all 4 of them into the air with wind pressure, then conjured a green thorned whip and lashed them. They screamed as bloody welts opened up on their backsides. I wanted everyone to know that forging my tickets came with consequences. It didn't take long before they cracked. One begged me to stop and confessed that Baron Levitt, the pineapple bread seller, had paid them 2 silver coins each to claim the grand prize with fake tickets. That was exactly what I wanted, to expose whoever was behind this. The crowd turned on Levitt immediately. People who'd bought from his shop swore they'd never go back. Levitt's face went white. He'd been careful, hiring strangers instead of using his own people, but he never imagined I'd whip confessions out of them in public. He tried to slip away, but I spotted him. The crowd parted as I walked straight toward him. He backed up, trembling, telling me not to do anything rash. I slapped him across the face. He tried to block with his battle energy. He was at peak first-rank knight level, but it meant nothing against a second-rank magic warrior. He hit the ground with a red handprint on his cheek and blood at the corner of his mouth. I offered him a knight's duel if he wanted to settle things properly. In a knight's duel, anything goes, even death, and the loser's family can't seek revenge afterward. But either side can refuse. Levitt ground his teeth. He already knew from that one slap he couldn't beat me. He swallowed his anger. I told him to get lost, then walked back to the shop and handed the real winner, a man named Hayden, his half-pound of dragon meat. He was shaking with excitement. 30 reputation points from him alone. Tens of thousands of eyes stared at that chunk of brownish-red meat. After the crowd broke up, people started bidding on Hayden's dragon meat. 50 silver coins, 55, the price kept climbing. It was a good day. I made 400 silver coins in sales, and more importantly, earned 600 reputation points in a single day, something I never could have imagined before. I knew the points from jam sales would start dropping after the 5th day as people got used to the flavors, but the lottery itself would keep bringing in about 140 points daily. No other merchant could copy this idea. Nobody else had dragon meat. Most people treated it like a priceless treasure, but I had over 10 tons of the stuff sitting around. If I didn't find ways to use it, it would just go bad. Over the next few days, I ramped up sandwich production while keeping the lottery prizes the same. With grape and sweet orange jams rolling out, I was pulling in 800 reputation points a day, more in 3 days than everything I'd earned before. It felt amazing. Then on the 4th day, a notice went up at the city gates. Starting tomorrow, all shops must close. Civilians stay off the streets for 5 whole days. Everyone should stock up on food. It was signed by the 3 Viscount families that ran Mott City, the Whites, the Jordans, and the Hughes. Nobody dared disobey them. That meant 5 days with no reputation farming for me. The notice didn't explain why, so I headed home to ask around. Father was busy, and my brother Plato and I don't get along, so I went to find my older brother Brent. He was practicing swordwork shirtless when I arrived. He grinned when he saw me and asked why I wasn't minding my booming sandwich business. I sighed and asked about the notice. That's when he told me about Princess Sherry. Her story was wild. She became queen of the Grey Wolf Kingdom at 16. When that kingdom fell 8 years ago, she was captured by the Shadow Leopard Kingdom and made their queen consort. Then their old king died, and the new king kept her. Later, the Shadow Leopard Kingdom owed money to the White Tiger Kingdom and used her to pay the debt. Somehow she ended up as queen consort of the Iron Rhino Kingdom after that. Then last year, during the latest war, she was captured again and brought to our Eagle Kingdom. 6 kings in total. The connection to the lockdown was this. Sherry was passing through Mott City on her way back from visiting her family and would rest here for 3 days. The noble families wanted 2 days to clean all the trash and dung off the streets. But more importantly, each family was secretly preparing their best products for a welcome banquet. If the princess liked what she saw, she might use her trade connections to help them do business in the capital. That was the real reason. No commoner shops allowed, in case the princess got distracted by their goods instead. Brent told me I had to attend the banquet too. It was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to meet the princess, and I could show off my snowflake cakes and jams. I asked if she'd really deal with minor nobles like us. He said absolutely. She ran a trade guild in the capital that had grown huge in just 1 year. She had an eye for promising products and partnered with anyone who had something good. If I could connect with her, selling my products in the capital would boost my reputation points enormously. This princess wasn't just a pretty face. She had real business sense. Brent asked how our joint venture was going. I told him I needed more workers and planned to recruit free citizens from Mott City after the princess left. Meanwhile, the jams I'd make during the lockdown days could go with his people to test markets in other big cities. We'd been delayed because I'd used all my jam for sandwiches to build up reputation locally. He offered to help if I ran into trouble recruiting. Hopetown's population was just too small for everything I wanted to do. I headed back to my shop. The streets were packed with people rushing to buy supplies for 5 days. Because of the lockdown notice, my sandwiches sold even faster than usual. With everyone watching eagerly, I started the day's lottery draw. After the lottery earned me another 160 reputation points, I had Jonathan and the others clean up the shop, then headed home. Back at the castle, Mrs. Allen served up chili dragon meat stir-fry, sweet and sour pork ribs, and dragon meat stewed with potatoes. Under my guidance, her cooking had improved so much she could rival a 5-star chef from my past life. Over dinner, I told Linda I wanted to expand the orchards and would need her help. She said the current size was fine since we didn't have enough workers. I explained that I'd be recruiting free citizens from Mott City soon, that Brent was already planning to sell jam in other big cities, and that if the princess liked our products, we might break into the capital's market. Our current orchards wouldn't be enough for that kind of demand. She agreed to help, then immediately asked what the princess looked like. Tina chimed in with what she'd heard. That Princess Sherry had been stunningly beautiful since childhood, and an old king in his 50s had defied everyone to make her his queen. She warned me not to let the princess bewitch me. I laughed it off. Even if Sherry was gorgeous, she had to be in her 30s or 40s by now. With all the beautiful maids and 2 lovely mages already around me, I wasn't worried about losing my head. The next 2 days were relaxing. I fished by the lake, and at one point rode drag route into the city to check things out. Every shop was closed. No commoners on the streets, just nobles and their servants scrubbing the roads over and over. On the 3rd morning, before dawn, I put on my unbreakable armor, grabbed my dragon roar sword, and rode to Mott City with Jonathan's group as escorts. The gates were wide open with flower wreaths lining both sides. The 3 viscounts and some older barons were huddled together discussing something. The streets were spotless, no trash, No mud, no stink. But I knew it wouldn't last. Without public toilets, the city would go back to its old self once the princess left. I found my father, Yahello Jordan, who told me the princess wouldn't arrive until the afternoon. He sent me back to the manor for lunch. I spent the morning visiting Grandmother Vitri's courtyard and chatting with her. Brent joined us, wondering aloud how beautiful the princess must be. Grandma scolded him for gossiping about royalty. After lunch, Brent and I headed out together. He wore his crocodile leather armor, which looked impressive, though not as impressive as my red, unbreakable armor. Other young nobles were filing out of their homes in polished silver armor, but none of it compared to even Brent's gear, let alone mine. Between the armor and my looks, I stood out like nobody else. At the city gates, honor guards lined both sides of the road holding ceremonial flowers. The three viscounts, my father Yahello Jordan, Gandalf Hughes, and Steve White, stood at the very front, followed by the senior barons, then us younger nobles, and finally the wealthy merchants without titles. About 120 people total, all waiting in silence. Time crawled. After an hour, some people got tired and sat down. After 2 more hours, people were clustering in groups, too restless to hold formation. Luckily, it was late April and not too hot. We knights stayed in line. If you can't even stand still, you might as well go back to farming. Finally, a scout my father had posted outside came running and shouting that the princess was coming. Everyone scrambled back into position. About 10 minutes later, hoofbeats echoed from beyond the gates. A tall man on a white horse rode in first, followed by a luxurious carriage pulled by 3 white horses. The man leading the princess's escort rode a white horse and looked about 40. His battle energy felt as strong as the 6th-rank knight who'd helped us slay the dragon. Behind the carriage came 20 knights in gold and silver armor, all at least 2nd rank. The king clearly valued this princess. Her protection was no joke. The 3 viscounts bowed with their left hands on their chests. The barons did the same. The merchants without titles dropped to their knees. The 6th-rank knight dismounted and gently told the princess they'd arrived at Mott City. The carriage door opened, and out stepped a woman in a white dress wearing a small golden crown. She was breathtaking. Her skin was flawless, her figure full and graceful, and every little movement she made radiated charm. The flower wreaths lining the road looked dull next to her. The young nobles around me were frozen, some audibly swallowing. I'd thought living with Linda and Tina would make me immune to beauty, but no. Those two were like flower buds that hadn't fully bloomed yet. Princess Sherry was like a night-blooming flower at its peak. Every smile tugged at something deep inside. No wonder 6 kings had fallen for her. My father coughed loudly, pushing battle energy into his voice to snap the young men out of it. Steve White stepped forward and offered the princess rest at his estate before the welcome banquet that evening. The 3 families had split duties. The Whites handled lodging. Our Jordan family provided the banquet grounds, and the Hughes family managed everything else, including food and the dance. The princess agreed, but right then a green parrot with a yellow tuft and a rainbow tail burst out from behind the carriage, screeching that it was the real princess. It grabbed the crown right off her head and flew away. Everyone panicked. The 3 viscounts went pale. My father shouted to stop it, but it was too late. Once that bird got high enough, even a 6th-rank knight or a levitating mage couldn't reach it. I activated my dragon human form. After 2 upgrades and my promotion to 2nd rank, I could fly and even carry a person. I shot into the sky after the parrot, a red streak against the clouds. People below were stunned. They'd never seen someone with wings. I caught up quickly and told the bird to hand over the crown. It shrieked that the crown was its, and it was the real princess. It dodged right. I grabbed for it, but it whipped its tail, spraying rainbow particles, and rocketed forward dozens of meters in an instant. This was no ordinary parrot. It was a magical beast. I pulled out my wand. I launched a fireball, but the parrot dodged it easily. The fireball dropped and scorched the street below. Then I cast a wind spell, sending a gale that forced the bird to struggle just to stay airborne. I swooped in to grab the crown, but the parrot glowed with rainbow light and split into 6 identical copies, each one holding a crown. All 6 scattered in different directions. I chased one down and reached for it, but my hand passed right through. It shattered like a reflection on water. A fake. At this rate, by the time I wasted time on another decoy or 2, the real parrot would be long gone. I needed a better plan. The fake parrots disappeared on contact. That was the key. I switched from my wand to dragon roar and pointed it at the sky. Fire energy gathered into red clouds overhead. I cast Flame Meteor Shower. Countless tiny fireballs rained down across a huge stretch of sky. I'd learned several powerful fire spells from Tina after reaching 2nd rank. The parrot couldn't dodge them all. Its fake copies vanished the instant a single spark touched them, leaving only the real one struggling to defend itself. Burnt green feathers drifted down, smelling scorched. Using the fire as cover, I snuck up behind the real parrot and grabbed the crown. It fought to hold on, flapping wildly, but I was stronger. I ripped the crown free. Before I could grab the bird itself, it burst into a streak of rainbow light and shot away. Without the crown weighing it down, it was way too fast for me to follow. But I had what I needed. I made sure the fire rain faded before reaching the ground so nobody below got hurt. I'd weakened the spell on purpose. I landed in front of the carriage, dropped my dragon form, and held the crown up with both hands. "Your Highness, your crown." Princess Sherry took it, placed it back on her head, and asked my name with a curious smile. I told her, and she said the Jordan family had produced a rare talent. Her eyes lingered on me for a moment before she stepped back into the carriage. My father came over and gave me a nod of approval. My dragon form was no longer a secret. Every noble in Mott City had just seen it. I hadn't planned on getting involved, but it was a matter of the city's honor. Brent threw his arm around my shoulder as we walked away. "How's it feel showing off in front of everyone?" I said it felt pretty good. Behind us, I noticed the golden-haired siblings, Due and Manda, watching me. Due joked that I'd stolen the spotlight. Manda frowned and said she couldn't read my strength anymore. Apparently, she was shocked I'd already reached 2nd rank magic warrior, when just months ago, I hadn't even awakened battle energy. Back at the manor, I told Brent I'd used up most of my magic and battle energy and needed to meditate before the banquet. He promised to come get me when it was time. I sat cross-legged on the bed in my old room and closed my eyes. That meteor shower had nearly drained me completely, and maintaining dragon form had burned through the rest. Hours later, Brent knocked on my door around 7. The banquet started in an hour. When he saw I was still wearing my unbreakable armor, he stared at me in disbelief. I reminded him he'd told me to wear my most expensive outfit. What's more valuable than dragon-scale armor? He covered his face and said nobody wears armor to a dinner party. I hadn't brought anything else. He dragged me to his room and tossed me a black tuxedo he'd never worn. Our builds were almost identical, so it fit perfectly. He said I'd be the most eye-catching person at the banquet tonight, and that our business pitch to the princess was riding on me. Then he muttered about how unfair it was that his own brother got the better-looking face. We headed to the venue, a Jordan family estate on the west side of the city. Plenty of nobles had already gathered. A pool in the center reflected the moonlight like scattered stars. To its right, white tables were pushed together into one long row with over 100 seats. Every noble and wealthy merchant in Mott City would be here tonight, all hoping to impress Princess Sherry and ride her connections straight to the capital. Before the banquet started, nobles stood around in small groups, chatting while servants moved through the crowd with drinks. Brent and I stood by the pool holding crystal glasses of purple-red wine. He told me it was our family's grape wine. Every drink, dish, and dessert at the banquet came from one of the local family's businesses. At 8 o'clock, Princess Sherry arrived in a white silk gown trimmed with gold. Everyone bowed. She sat at the head of the table with the 3 viscounts and her 6th-rank knight beside her. Brent and I sat in the middle, close enough to make out her face. Hundreds of plates came out, though really it was about 40 dishes repeated. Knights used their battle energy to float the dishes through the air in a slow rotation. Steak, goose liver, red date cakes from the Hughes family, a big tub of snowflake cakes, and stacks of jam sandwiches that Brent had fought to get included. Honestly, none of it compared to Mrs. Allen's cooking back home. Then I felt someone watching me. I looked up and caught the princess's eyes on me. She smiled and nodded. I smiled back. Our eyes met for just a second before we both looked away. Brent nudged me, grinning, saying the princess had noticed me and our capital business was as good as done. After dinner, the tables were cleared and a piano was brought out. Elegant music filled the courtyard. Dozens of pretty, well-trained women came out as dance partners. Brent told me to pick one. I shook my head. For some reason, I kept thinking about Linda and Tina back home. Brent called me boring and went off on his own. As someone from 21st century China in my past life, I wasn't really into this kind of party. These women weren't just dance partners. After the ball, they could be taken to bed. I stayed where I was. I watched the princess instead. 5 or 6 nobles crowded around her, all trying to pitch their products. One bragged about his goose farm. Another interrupted to ask about the honey-glazed steak. Someone else pushed the red date cakes. They kept cutting each other off, and I could tell they were just annoying her. Their products probably wouldn't impress anyone in the capital anyway. Then the princess's sweet voice cut through. What was that white, snowy-looking pastry? And those 2 slices of bread with the fruity sweet sauce between them? Whose products are those? The nobles around her went quiet and exchanged glances. After all their pushing, she wasn't interested in any of their stuff. One baron pointed at me. I was sitting alone on the steps, completely out of place at a dance party. The princess set down her wine and walked over. "Baron Chris," she called. I stood up and greeted her. Then she asked if she could invite me to dance. I was caught off guard. I'd expected a business conversation, not a dance. But I recovered quickly, held out my hand, and said I'd be honored. She placed her slender fingers on my palm. I pulled her close and put my hand on her waist. We danced to the piano music. I didn't know how to dance from my past life, but my body's original owner had been trained, so I managed fine. Her face was inches away. I could smell a light, clean fragrance. Not perfume, just her natural scent. While we danced, she asked about the snowflake cakes and jam. I told her they were my own recent inventions, available nowhere outside Mott City. Her eyes lit up. Our steps got faster. I was surprised to feel battle energy in her body. She was a knight too, with incredible flexibility, pulling off moves that would be impossible for a normal person. Gradually, everyone else stopped dancing and backed away until only the 2 of us were left on the floor, spinning under the moonlight. When the music ended, I bowed and she curtsied. The crowd burst into applause. Back in the crowd, I took a few deep breaths. Dancing with the princess had made my heart race more than I wanted to admit. Brent teased me about saving the dance for her. I told him I couldn't exactly refuse a royal invitation. The ball went on late into the night. I had no desire to dance again. Brent and I were heading back to the manor when one of the princess's personal guards called out to me. Brent shoved me forward, saying if she wanted to talk business this late. No wonder her trade guild was so successful. He told me the jam deal was in my hands. I followed the guard to a luxurious 3-story villa. He led me to a room on the 3rd floor and left. I knocked and the princess told me to come in. The room was about 50 square meters, split by a white curtain. On my side was a vanity table and wardrobes. Through the curtain, I could barely make out her lying on a large bed. Pink mist filled the room, carrying an intoxicating scent. I realized it was battle energy, but pink? Normal battle energy is silver. Linda's magic turns green because she specializes in plant magic. If I focused on fire, mine would turn red. But I couldn't find any record in my memories of what pink meant. She asked when I'd awakened my battle energy. I said half a year ago, after my coming-of-age ceremony. I couldn't tell her the truth that it had only been half a month. She said reaching 2nd rank in half a year confirmed something, though she didn't say what. I was surprised she could read my exact level. She offered me a reward for retrieving her crown. I jokingly asked for a viscount title. She laughed and said only the king could grant that, but told me I could earn one through military merit in the expansion war coming in a month. Then the pink energy in the room thickened sharply. The door sealed shut. I couldn't open it, even with all my strength. Heat surged through my body. The princess stepped out from behind the curtain, wearing nothing at all. I lost control. I tore off my clothes and went to her. She whispered for me to activate my dragon form. She cast a red barrier around the room to block all sound. Half an hour later, I lay on the bed and asked if the guards would suspect anything. She said they were all her loyal people. Then a system message flashed before my eyes. Reputation -100. I stared at the golden text in disbelief. I'd never lost reputation points before. I needed to never do this again. The princess looked puzzled too, as if surprised I could sense what had happened. I got dressed and told her I'd see her another time, then left. Walking through the empty streets at that late hour, everything felt unreal, like a dream. Back in my old room at the manor, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Then something clicked. Right before my reputation dropped, the princess had inhaled deeply, like she was drawing something out of me. I'd assumed the point loss was the system punishing me, but now it seemed connected to her. The next morning I woke up feeling refreshed, called Jonathan, and headed back to Hope Town. Back at Hope Town, I had breakfast and carried a chair up to the top of the castle to enjoy the sunshine. With the princess still in Mott City and all shops closed, I had nothing to do. Last night felt like a dream, and I figured the best thing for both of us was to forget it ever happened. Then Jonathan came running up in a panic. The princess was heading our way. I jumped to my feet so fast I knocked the chair over. Before last night, I might have thought she was just passing through. Now I was sure she was coming here on purpose, and she hadn't even sent word ahead. I rushed downstairs and gathered everyone in the castle. I told Mrs. Allen to prepare lunch with dragon meat, and sent Jonathan's group to clean the place up. I wasn't about to let Hopetown look bad. Then I took Robert, my sharpest talker, and went outside to wait. Maybe she was here to talk business. This could be a real opportunity. About 15 minutes later, the princess rode up on her white horse with her guards. She looked around curiously and said my territory was different from other noble lands she'd visited. In most places, the serfs were skinny, lifeless, walking around like zombies. Here, my people were still thin but had color in their cheeks, smiles on their faces. She'd even heard children singing. I told her that was because these weren't serfs, they were my citizens. All they needed was enough food and decent clothes to be happy. Most nobles could easily provide that, but simply chose not to. That was the difference between how I thought, coming from the modern world, and how the local nobles ran things. Elsewhere, serfs gave 90% of their harvest as tax and were forced into unpaid labor. In my territory, if people worked for me, they got paid enough to support their families. The princess seemed thoughtful about that. I offered to show her the orchards where we made the jam. I summoned Dragroot from the Soul Orb. The princess's white horse panicked at the sight of the massive beast, but Sherry just admired it and said I'd found a fine mount. We rode out slowly to match her group's pace. 20 minutes later, we reached the orchards. She looked impressed by the rows of green fruit trees stretching out before us. There were over 20 work sheds made of leaves and straw, with workers bustling in and out. Strong men loaded black jars of jam onto carts. I walked her through the operation. 4 types of fruit: apple, pear, sweet orange, and grape, each with a regular and a sweeter version. We produced about 80 jars per flavor per day, and I plan to scale up to around 200 within a few months. I took her inside one shed where the heat hit us immediately. She watched workers peel and core apples, cut them into small pieces, fill wooden basins, and dump them into large pots over open flames. I only showed her this one step. I wasn't about to let her figure out the entire jam-making process. Then I asked her directly what she thought of my jam business. The princess said the jam business looked promising but wanted to think it over. I grumbled to myself. She was acting like last night never happened. Time to bring out my secret weapon. I took her to a ditch near the orchards where workers were carrying water with shoulder poles I'd invented. She was impressed that I could come up with practical tools like that. But that wasn't the main event. I drew Dragon Roar across my palm and dripped blood into the water. Before long, 15 small crocodiles swarmed in, each about 40 centimeters long. Kinzart, the 6th-rank knight, blurted out in shock that they were 2nd-rank magical beasts, iron-armored giant crocodiles. The princess covered her mouth in disbelief. Even the royal family only raised tame 1st-rank creatures. Breeding 2nd-rank beasts was almost unheard of across the entire Eagle Kingdom because of the danger. The crocodiles gobbled up my blood and scattered. My blood made them grow faster, though they could already hunt on their own. I casually mentioned that once they laid eggs, the numbers would multiply fast, producing loads of tough crocodile hide. I said I'd love to sell it in the capital, but had no connections. That did it. The princess immediately offered to partner with me on the crocodile leather. She knew capital nobles would go crazy for armor made from it. Then I asked about the jam. She said she'd buy everything I could produce, at whatever price I named, as much as I had. She'd handle all the risk, bandits, slow sales, everything. I'd just sit back and collect money. Of course, I wouldn't sell her all of it. I still needed jam for my sandwich business in Mott City to earn reputation, and Brent's expansion needed supply too. She'd get whatever was left over. I suggested we head back to the castle for lunch. Kinzart tried to decline, but the princess silenced him with a look and happily agreed. When we arrived, the smell of cooking hit us immediately. Even Kinzart and the guards were swallowing hard. The servants lined up at the entrance to greet the princess, which Robert had organized nicely. I brought her upstairs and signaled Linda and Tina to join us. I introduced them, a 4th-rank mage and a 3rd-rank plant mage. Both the princess and Kinzart exchanged stunned looks. They couldn't understand how a small-time baron had 2 high-level mages working for him. That was exactly why I'd invited the girls, to make an impression. Mrs. Allen brought out 8 dishes. The princess and Kinsart had never seen food like this before. I introduced each one: sweet and sour fish, 4-joy meatballs, stir-fried cabbage with meat. Kinsart looked confused. He'd expected plain grilled steak, not this. I'd prepared Western utensils for the princess, but used chopsticks myself. She watched me pick up food with them and asked what they were. I said I'd learned about them from a foreign merchant. She wanted to try, so I gave her and Kinsart each a pair. Neither of them could figure out how to use them, and they switched back to forks and spoons. I told her to keep the chopsticks and practice at home. Then they took their first bites of the meatballs and froze. A wave of heat spread through their bodies, strengthening them from the inside. The princess asked what kind of meat it was. I said casually, "Dragon meat." Both of them gasped. Dragon meat is expensive. Even the princess only ate it 2 or 3 times a year, and Kinsart had only had it twice in his entire life. They couldn't believe a small-time rural baron was serving it so casually. 7 of the 8 dishes were made with dragon meat. The princess asked where I got it. I told her a dragon had wandered into my territory, and I killed it. Kinsart couldn't wrap his head around that. Wild dragons are usually 5th rank or above, fighting on par with 6th or 7th rank knights. He probably convinced himself it was just a baby dragon with not much meat. He was wrong. The princess smelled a business opportunity and asked if I wanted to sell dragon meat in the capital. I said sure. I had about 13 tons. Kinsart could barely speak after hearing that number. That was exactly why I'd serve dragon meat. I couldn't eat 13 tons myself, and even with dragon meat lasting longer than regular meat, it would rot within 2 or 3 years. Better to sell it now and invest in developing my territory. Mott City couldn't absorb that much, but the capital's wealthy nobles could. We started negotiating. I asked for 80 silver coins per pound. The capital price was 100, but I needed to account for transport costs. The princess countered at 50, citing the risk of bandits. Instead of arguing, I put a spatial ring on the table. She recognized it immediately. I offered to lend it to her during our partnership. It would eliminate the transport risk entirely. She thought it over and agreed to 80 per pound. She'd also get to use a spatial ring for about a year, which was a bonus since her own rings were packed with more valuable items. I handed her a price sheet for the jams. Grape was the most expensive since grapes were popular with nobles and scarce. 300 copper for regular, 250 for the sweeter version. Pear and orange were 250 and 230. Apple was cheapest at 200 and 180. She glanced at it and agreed to everything. She said to come sign the contract tomorrow. She'd brought 700 gold coins. I proposed giving her 1 ton of dragon meat plus 200 jars of assorted jam, with 500 gold as a deposit and the rest paid on her next supply run. We'd built enough trust for that. She smiled and agreed. Over lunch, she asked about the cooking style, which she'd never seen before. I made up the same story I always used, that I'd learned from foreign merchants and taught everything to Mrs. Allen. She pressed me on which country they came from. I started sweating. This excuse worked fine on Linda and Tina, but this woman had lived in 5 different kingdoms. I blurted out that they were from a distant land called Huaxiao on the other side of the continent. Her eyes flickered, but she didn't push further. I exhaled. As she was leaving, she turned and mouthed a few words that only I caught. "Come find me tonight." I smiled and waved until she disappeared from sight, then let out a long breath. We'd handled the day without any awkwardness about last night, which was good. But going back to her again, last time she'd inhaled once and drained 100 reputation points from me. What if she took more? What if she emptied my points and made me drop in rank? Everything I'd worked so hard for could vanish. So I made my decision. I went back inside, took a nap, and spent the afternoon fishing. Fishing makes me happy. Women only slow down my sword arm. The next morning I slept in late, had breakfast, then grabbed the second spatial ring and headed down to the castle cellar. The servants had already weighed out 1 ton of dragon meat and packed it into wooden crates. I loaded everything into the ring. At the orchard, a worker showed me to the storage shed. 8 stacks of jam jars stood in neat rows, each labeled by flavor. 5 rows per stack, 100 jars per row. I pulled 2 rows from each stack, totaling the 200 jars per flavor I'd promised the princess, and stored them in the ring. I rode Dragroute full speed to Mott City. The streets were completely empty. All shops closed until the princess left tomorrow. That worked out nicely. I could gallop through town without worrying about hitting anyone. In under 5 minutes, I reached her villa. The princess was sprawled on a sofa looking annoyed. "So you finally decided to show up?" she said, pouting. I scratched my head and made an excuse about being busy last night, then quickly changed the subject to business. She sat across from me in a short dress that made it hard to focus. I kept my eyes down and handed over the spatial ring. She pulled out a crate, tasted a piece of dragon meat, confirmed it was fresh, and counted all 100 crates with her mind. Then she checked a jar of grape jam and approved the quality. She handed me 2 copies of a trade contract protected by the Noble Code, binding even for royalty. I read through it carefully. Everything matched what we discussed. We both signed, keeping 1 copy each. Kinzart brought out a gold-trimmed box. Inside were 500 gold coins that nearly blinded me. I dumped them out and counted twice before confirming the amount and storing them in my ring. I stood to leave, but the princess sent Kinzart out and closed the door. She pressed herself close and told me she was leaving tomorrow and wanted me to stay the night. I stepped back nervously, but then she said something that grabbed my attention. She promised not to absorb my source energy this time. I asked her what source energy was. She explained it was a mysterious power that sped up cultivation. Some people were born with it, and others, like crowned kings, could absorb it from heaven and earth. That clicked something in my head. My system had been converting reputation into cultivation progress. Maybe what the system called reputation was actually source energy that it was helping me absorb from the world. That's why she could drain it from me. She was taking the same thing. I asked why she could absorb source energy. She just smiled and dodged the question, adding that the old king had lasted only 3 to 5 minutes, while I was much better. I didn't respond to that. Instead, I started thinking. Sherry became queen of the Grey Wolf Kingdom at 16. Then, that kingdom fell. She moved to the Shadow Leopard Kingdom. The old king died suddenly. She went to the White Tiger Kingdom. Civil war broke out. Then the Iron Rhino Kingdom. It became the weakest nation around. Every kingdom she'd been part of had collapsed or weakened. She'd been draining the king's source energy the whole time. A true femme fatale in every sense. She insisted I stay. I made her promise not to absorb my source energy. She agreed. That night, the pink mist filled the room again. I'll spare the details. I didn't stay the night at the princess's place. I went back to the manor. The next morning, Brent yanked my blanket off before I was even awake. It was time to see the princess off. After grabbing breakfast at Grandma Vitry's, we headed out. Brent sighed and said that as far as he knew, the princess hadn't signed a single business deal with any family during her stay, aside from buying some food and water. Some minor nobles couldn't even get a meeting with her. He asked how my jam deal went. I smiled and told him I'd already signed a contract and sold her 1,600 jars. He nearly jumped with excitement. But our brother Plato overheard and scoffed, pointing out that none of the guards loading the carriage were carrying any jam jars. Brent looked disappointed. I explained that I'd given the princess a spatial ring. All the goods were stored inside it. Plato sneered and said my jam couldn't possibly interest someone like the princess. Over 100 people gathered outside the villa. When the princess emerged, Kinzart helped her into the carriage. She waved at the crowd, and her eyes lingered on me for just a moment before she turned away. Plato noticed a spatial ring on her finger and froze, but then convinced himself she must have always had one. The carriage rolled out through the city gates. We watched until it disappeared. I let out a long breath. These days without my shop open had cost me valuable reputation points. I was about to head to my shop when my father grabbed me. His face was serious. "Come to the study. I need to talk to you." In his spacious study lined with bookshelves, he got straight to the point. "The expansion war starts in June. I want to bring you along." "What do you think?" I agreed. The expansion war was when neighboring kingdoms sent knights and nobles to raid the weakest country, seizing land, people, and wealth until it fell. Right now the target was the Iron Rhino Kingdom. It was like a cruel game where trapped animals eat the weakest one first. It ran from early June through late July, 2 months. Usually nobles brought their second sons to earn military merit and climb in rank, while the eldest stayed home in case something went wrong. In previous years, since I hadn't awakened battle energy, my father had gone alone. Then he said something that surprised me. After this war, he planned to use his accumulated merit to secure me a Viscount title. I asked if he'd been saving that merit for his own promotion to Count. He shook his head and said he'd probably never reach that rank. Brent could hold the family's current position, but nothing more. But me, he saw unlimited potential. Maybe one day I could become a count, a marquis, or even a duke. I never expected my father to think so highly of me. He pointed to a wooden box by the wall and said the magic crystals inside were mine. He wanted me to reach second rank mage within a month. Knight rank required slow physical tempering with battle energy and couldn't be rushed. This was all he could do to help. I opened the box. It was packed with purple crystals the size of goose eggs, shimmering with light. Magic crystals cost 10 silver coins each, and there were over 300, about 30 gold coins worth. Even for a Viscount family, that was a serious investment. My father had gone all in. I looked up at him. "Father, I'm already a second-rank magic warrior." My father's eyes went wide when I told him I was already second rank. I explained that the princess had confirmed I possessed source energy, which made cultivation much faster. He got excited and said the family's future was in my hands. As I was leaving, he stopped me and demanded some dragon meat. I'd honestly forgotten. We hadn't been close before, barely exchanging words when we met. I pulled out about 20 or 30 pounds and handed it over. He looked pleased, but I felt a bit cheated. The meat I'd just given away was worth almost as much as the magic crystals he'd given me. Back at my shop, Jonathan already had things running with a long line out front. All 4 jam flavors had been sold at least once now, so reputation gains were starting to drop. Since the staff had everything under control, I sat down and tried absorbing magic from one of the crystals. The energy flowed through my body but looped right back into the stone. I couldn't absorb any of it. I tried again with the same result. So that was it. Ever since the system activated, I could only level up through reputation. Normal training methods didn't work for me anymore. The dragon meat I'd traded for these crystals was basically wasted on me. I decided to give them to Tina and Linda instead. After selling over 1,200 sandwiches, I ran the daily lottery. Today's total came to 400 reputation points. At this pace, I could hit third-rank magic warrior before the expansion war in June. Back at the castle that evening, Robert and the maids were lined up at the door to welcome me home. That warm feeling of having people waiting for you. I'd never experienced that in my previous life. I gave everyone a 5 silver coin bonus for how well they'd handled the princess's visit. Mrs. Allen outdid herself again with dinner. Afterward, I handed the box of magic crystals to Linda and Tina. Linda squealed that she loved me. The pair of them gave me 20 reputation points each, 40 total for 30 gold coins worth of crystals. Not a great exchange rate, but both mages contributed far more to my territory than 30 gold coins could buy, especially Linda with her plant magic for the orchards. I went straight to bed, exhausted from the late night with the princess. While I slept, dozens of figures in black crept toward Hope Town. Their leader was a giant of a man, over 2 meters tall. Someone had put a 4,000 gold coin bounty on my head. His intel said I was just a first-rank magic warrior with 1 third-rank knight and 4 first-rank knights. His group had 4 third-rank knights. They figured it would be easy. What they didn't notice was that as they passed through a grove, one of my sentinel trees opened a leaf shaped like an eye and watched them. A warm sensation on my chest woke me up. I pulled out the golden-veined leaf I always kept close, the sentinel tree's warning leaf. Ever since the saplings had grown, I'd had Linda plant them at key points around my territory. Now they were finally proving their worth. Something was wrong. I pressed the leaf against my eyes. Through the sentinel tree's vision, I could clearly see about 35 masked figures creeping toward my castle, including 4 third-rank knights. This was serious. I woke everyone up, Linda, Tina, and all the knights. When I told them what was coming, their faces turned grim. This was the biggest threat Hope Town had ever faced. I laid out my plan. I draw their attention from the front while Tina and Linda hid outside and prepared powerful spells to hit them by surprise. When the bandits reached the castle, they found the doors open and me standing there with Jonathan and our knights, weapons ready. They stumbled back, confused about how we'd known they were coming. Before they could react, one of Linda's giant purple thorn flowers shot up behind them and bit into a man, leaving 2 rows of bloody holes. Tina launched wind blades from a treetop that took down 3 instantly and wounded 5 or 6 more. I drew Dragon Roar and charged. Tina used wind magic to fly herself and Linda into the fight, taking on 3 of the third-rank knights. Jonathan faced the giant leader. Linda grew combat plants to trap the second and first-rank fighters. We were badly outnumbered, 35 enemies with 4 third-rank knights, 9 second-rank, and 22 first-rank. Enough firepower to wipe out any rural baron and even rival some Viscount's defenses. I fought 4 or 5 second-rank opponents at once and still had room to breathe. I activated dragon form. My body surged in size, even bigger than their massive leader. Dragon roar sliced through one knight's sword like nothing, and I ran him through the chest. 1 strike, 1 kill. I didn't look back as blood sprayed behind me. I cast explosive fireball. A huge sphere of fire swallowed another knight whole, turning him into a screaming torch. I put him out of his misery with a thrust. The remaining second-rank knights grouped together, their sword hands trembling. They'd expected a helpless teenage baron, not this. With pressure off Linda, she only had to handle about a dozen first-rank fighters. Meanwhile, I overheard Jonathan recognizing the giant leader, Franton the Mad Blade, a peak third-rank knight, an infamous bandit boss from the northwest. He'd reportedly killed at least 10 nobles for hire. Even amid the chaos, my hearing picked up every word. I had no grudge with Franton, which meant one thing. Someone had hired him to kill me. The black mage who'd poisoned my body's original owner hadn't been a random attack. It was premeditated. Someone hidden in the shadows had been trying to kill me all along. Rage boiled inside me. I searched every memory but couldn't figure out who I'd offended. I swore I'd find whoever it was and tear them apart. I channeled my fury into the fight. I cast lightning, sending a thick blue arc into a knight who collapsed foaming and twitching. I thrust dragon roar at him, but 2 others blocked my sword while their companions dragged him away. The remaining 7 second-rank knights realized none of them could beat me alone, so they grouped up. 2 tried flanking me from both sides, going for my weak spots. I beat my wings and rode the air current backward. Against 7 opponents, I had to stay mobile, pick them off one by one, and never let them pin me down. They stood shoulder to shoulder, weapons tight, nerves high. 2 of their comrades were already dead. I threw wind blades and fireballs, but they blocked everything. We hit a stalemate. I glanced at the other fights. Tina was holding her own against 3 third-rank knights. Linda, Dragroot, and our knights were handling the 14 first-rank enemies just fine. But Jonathan was getting torn apart by Franton, bleeding from multiple wounds, barely hanging on. I couldn't wait any longer. I charged in swinging dragon roar at one knight. 3 swords blocked me while 2 more attacked from the side. But instead of dodging, I ignored the flankers and thrust at a different target. They thought I'd lost my mind, until their blades hit my unbreakable armor and just scraped off, leaving only dents. Meanwhile, Dragon Roar shot a fireball into my target's face, blinding him, and I drove the blade through his throat. 3 knights stabbed my chest simultaneously, faces lit with triumph, which instantly turned to shock when their swords couldn't pierce the armor. I stepped back and watched the sword marks on my chest heal and vanish. The armor's self-repair was just unfair. 6 left now. My chest hurt from the impacts even though the armor held, but I laughed and taunted them. They'd never seen anything like it and lost all confidence in trading blows with me. Then Dragroot came thundering in from behind, scattering the group with a charge. I seized the opening and flew at one of them, unleashing a storm of attacks. His battered sword shattered in seconds, and I cut his throat. Another knight tried stabbing Dragroot, but my mount just exploded to full speed and vanished 100 meters away, leaving the man swinging at empty air. Dragroot kept circling, ready to strike again. Our teamwork was seamless. 5 left, and they were terrified. Same rank as me, but I was a magic warrior, unbeatable at equal level. Their weapons and armor were garbage compared to mine. I summoned 18 dragon palms. A silver battle energy dragon coiled around my body, its roar making everyone nearby tremble. The 5 knights launched their own combat techniques at me, but while they focused on me, they forgot about what was behind them. Dragroot charged in silently, flames on his hooves, horns glowing red, and gored a knight from behind, launching him high into the air. I sent the energy dragon flying upward. It punched clean through the man's abdomen, leaving a fist-sized hole. He crashed to the ground in a pool of blood, eyes rolling back. Dead. I flickered away before the other's attacks could land. I wasn't arrogant enough to tank multiple combat techniques at once. Dragroot pulled back too, still circling like a ghost, ready for the next kill. The remaining 4 were barely breathing. Their comrades kept dying no matter how careful they were. They were starting to think about running. Then Jonathan came flying past me, coughing blood. I caught him. His armor was shredded, wounds everywhere. He apologized, saying Franton was too strong. I patted his shoulder and told him to take over the 4 knights in front of me. I'd handle Franton myself. Franton was cursing about how useless his men were. 9 against 1, and more than half were gone. I spread my wings, flew up to face him, and we stared each other down. He pointed his massive blade at me and grinned. "Kid, your head is mine today." I told him to come prove it. Even in dragon form with dragon roar and the unbreakable armor, facing Franton, a peak 3rd rank knight, was something else entirely. Our first clash sent me stumbling back 7 or 8 steps, each foot stamping deep into the ground. He only moved back 2 or 3. He cursed about a country baron having such a fine weapon, then eyed dragon roar with greed. I cast Thunderstorm, a powerful 2nd rank spell I'd learned from Tina. Dozens of thick lightning bolts rained down on him. He stabbed his blade into the ground and kicked up a dome of dirt and sand that insulated him from most of the electricity. But one bolt broke through and left him twitching, hair smoking. I rushed in and thrust dragon roar at him. He blocked with his blade. I cast lightning through the sword. The electric current made him foam at the mouth. I aimed for his throat. He snapped awake just in time, tilting his head so the blade only nicked his neck. We traded more blows, and each impact nearly tore the sword from my numb hands. Then he unleashed his ultimate technique, Thousand Wheel Blade. He hurled his spinning weapon at me in a disc of silver light so fast I couldn't dodge. I threw up a battle energy shield, crossed my wings over my body, and braced myself. The disc shattered my shield, then shredded through my wings. The pain was excruciating. Those wings were part of me. They dissolved into red sparks. The weakened blade slammed into dragon roar and knocked it from my hands, then hit my crossed arms. Even the unbreakable armor couldn't fully stop it. A deep gash opened up, blood flowing inside the armor. The armor repaired itself in seconds, but my wound didn't. Now it was my turn. I could barely lift my injured arm, sweat pouring down my face. I gathered everything I had left. One hand formed a massive explosive fireball. The other summoned the 18 Dragon Palms Energy Dragon. Then I screamed and ignited my battle energy. The silver dragon turned crimson, wreathed in flames. Franton had no weapon. His blade was stuck in the ground after I'd stopped it. One of his men tossed him a sword, but Jonathan cut that man down immediately. Franton caught the sword anyway and charged straight at me, abandoning all defense. I pushed both attacks forward together. He cut through the fireball, scattering flames everywhere, then slammed into the energy dragon. An explosion sent up a red mushroom cloud. Franton burst out the other side, armor destroyed, skin burned red, stinking of scorched flesh. He ran a few more steps toward me and collapsed face first less than half a meter away. His red-hot sword clattered down beside me. 1 or 2 more seconds and I'd have been dead. I was gasping, drenched in cold sweat, completely drained. My dragon form had dropped. I had nothing left. Someone shouted that I was defenseless and to kill me for the bounty. Tina vaporized that man instantly, but the reminder sent the surviving bandits into a frenzy. They abandoned their own fights and charged at me, for 1,000 gold coins lying helpless on the ground. Jonathan, Tina, and Linda took down 6 or 7 more, but couldn't stop them all. The fastest one reached me, sword raised, grinning. Then Dragroot slammed in from nowhere, scooped me onto his back with his horns, and sprinted me out of the circle. Nobody could match his speed. Once I was safe 500 meters away, he shot red beams from his horns into my chest, restoring about 1/3 of my battle energy. But it left him so weak he started to collapse. I caught him, patted his head, and told him to rest. I recalled him into the soul orb. Then I turned to face the bandits still running toward me, cracking my knuckles. Dragon roar flew back to my hand as a red streak of light. I activated dragon form again and tore through them like a wolf through sheep. Anyone below 3rd rank couldn't survive a single swing. Limbs flew. When I came out the other side, only 3 3rd rank knights and 2 2nd rank remained, all wounded. They tried to scatter, but we had them boxed in, Tina and Linda in front, Jonathan on one side, our knights on the other, me behind. 35 bandits had come expecting an easy payday. Now their leader was dead and they were surrounded. One 3rd rank knight tried charging toward the weakest point in our formation. Tina dropped a wall of razor wind in his path that would have shredded him. I attacked again while Tina and Linda supported with magic and combat plants. 2 more 2nd rank knights fell. The remaining 3 kept fighting, but it was just a matter of time. Tina's wind blade tore through one, spilling his insides. The last 2 were in terrible shape, one missing an arm the other blinded, both nearly out of battle energy. The one-armed man raised his remaining hand. "Don't you want to know who hired us?" I signaled Tina and Linda to hold their attacks. He caught his breath. "Let us go, and I'll tell you who wants you dead." I told the one-armed knight to talk. He said it was Gandalf Hughes, a viscount in Mott City. Supposedly my rise was threatening the Hughes family's interests, so he'd paid them 200 gold up front with another 3,800 on delivery of my head. I laughed coldly. My head was apparently worth quite a lot. The knight asked if they could go now. I shook my head and gave the order, "Kill them all, leave no one." They screamed about honor, but Tina's magic wiped them out in seconds. All 35 bandits were gone. The Mad Blade gang was finished. I dropped to the ground, completely spent. My dragon form faded. I took off the unbreakable armor. My arm was still bleeding. All our knights were wounded. Jonathan worst of all, his armor practically painted red. Only Tina and Linda were untouched. Linda grew some magic plants with green fruits called cloudberries. We squeezed out the juice and rubbed it on our wounds. It felt cool with a slight sting, like mint. Jonathan needed over 20 of them, leaving him coated in green like some kind of swamp creature. But it worked. My arm stopped bleeding and the pain eased. Tina asked if I believed the bandit story. I thought carefully. The Jordan and Hughes families had old business rivalries, but nothing worth killing over. Spending 4,000 gold to assassinate someone's second son made no financial sense for any family in Mott City. Besides, a bandit coming from far away couldn't verify anyone's identity. The person who hired them could have claimed to be anyone, Gandalf Hughes, Dwayne White, whoever. The employer had been careful to hide who they really were. If this were the first attempt on my life, maybe I'd have believed it. But my body's original owner had been poisoned by a black mage before I even arrived. Someone had been trying to kill Chris long before I was a threat to anyone. Back then, the original Chris was just a weak, bullied little baron living off farm taxes. Why would anyone bother? Tina pointed out something I'd missed. What if the person who hired them knew from the start that Franton would fail? Then they'd only be out 200 gold for the deposit, and by using a fake identity, they'd turn me against the Hughes family. Classic misdirection. That's when it clicked. The Edmund Society. Those black mages had been spying on me with birds for a long time. They knew my strength better than anyone. And if they were working with some family in Mott City, it made perfect sense. The real culprit was whoever would benefit most from the Jordan and Hughes families going to war. My plan was simple. Pretend to believe the story, make some trouble for the Hughes family as fake retaliation, and quietly investigate to find the real puppet master. After resting a bit, we collected the spoils. We piled up 35 bodies and stripped them of weapons, armor, and valuables. Most swords were ruined from hitting Dragon Roar, but Franton's big blade was quality, just needed some repairs. We found 200 gold coins and over 600 silver in their pockets. Shiloh burned the bodies. The smoke rose thick, then the wind scattered the ashes until nothing remained. I gave each knight who fought 5 gold coins as a bonus. That earned me 150 reputation points from the 5 of them, 30 each. Tina and Linda, who apparently considered money beneath them, gave me 0 reputation. Typical. Back at the castle, Robert had all the servants lined up at the door to welcome me back. I announced a 2 silver coin monthly raise for everyone. The grateful cheers earned me a steady trickle of reputation points. I had money now. A few extra silver coins meant nothing compared to keeping my people happy. Back in my room, I reviewed the fight. In dragon form as a magic warrior, I was nearly unbeatable at my own rank, roughly equal to a mid-level 3rd-rank knight. But against someone at Franton's peak level, I'd barely scraped through. I needed to get stronger. Between the Edmund Society and whoever was pulling strings from the shadows, the pressure was real. Then the system pinged for the first time in a while. A new task: expand my territory's population to 2,000 people. I was at 212. The reward made my heart jump. Blueprints for a brick kiln and the technique for making bricks. This world didn't have brick-making technology. Everyone quarried stone from mountains using manual labor. With bricks, I could build a better castle or sell them as a whole new industry. Plus, more people meant more reputation. When all around, the next morning I woke up sore all over, the aftereffects of last night's fight. My arm wound had scabbed over and would fully heal in 2 or 3 days thanks to my 2nd-rank recovery. Tina reminded me to be careful. Whoever was behind this wouldn't give up easily. I asked Linda to grow more sentinel tree saplings to widen our surveillance network. Those trees had saved us. Without that early warning, we'd have been caught sleeping. Jonathan was in rough shape, barely able to walk, so I gave him a few days off. The other 4 nights were fine thanks to the cloudberry treatment. Dragroot was weak too from giving me his energy, so I left him home with the maids. I rode my chestnut horse to the orchards, loaded 100 jars of jam into my ring, and headed to Mott City. Selling sandwiches was secondary today. The main goal was recruiting workers. At the shop, I handed the jam to Shiloh's team to make sandwiches, then went to the city gates where foot traffic was heaviest. I put up a big sign. Hiring. Hope Town needs young workers. Daily pay, 50 copper coins. Food and housing included. I wasn't trying to make them permanent residents right away. City people liked city life. My plan was to hire them as workers first, let them get comfortable with the countryside, and hopefully they'd eventually settle down and bring their families. Mott City had plenty of free citizens who survived on odd jobs. My sign drew a crowd. People couldn't believe the pay, 50 copper with meals and a roof. Some thought it was a scam. Hope Town was just a tiny rural settlement, after all. Finally, a bearded middle-aged man stepped forward and asked what the work involved. I told him it was simple, building houses. I needed housing for 2,000 people before they arrived. The orchard work was too sensitive to hand over to outsiders. Only once they became actual citizens of Hope Town would I trust them with that. He hesitated about the pay, so I grabbed a fistful of copper coins and held them out. His first day's wages, paid up front. I'd actually had trouble scrounging up 50 coppers since I usually dealt in gold and silver. His eyes went wide. After seeing that, everyone rushed over. I picked about 20 young, strong men and sent 15 back to Hope Town with Shiloh to start building houses under Robert's direction. The other 5 stayed at the shop, where I had them wash their hands and learn to make jam sandwiches. They picked it up quickly. With the new hands working, I went out front and started selling. That morning at the city gates, I put up my recruitment sign and started calling out the offer, 50 copper coins a day, meals and housing included. Most of the free citizens hanging around just stared. They wanted to believe it, but couldn't. These people had been cheated by nobles their whole lives, worked from dawn to midnight for 30 coppers, so I understood the hesitation. Among the crowd was a young man named Jed. I didn't know his story at the time, but I'd later learn he was one of those free citizens who refused to sell himself into serfdom no matter how desperate things got. He lived crammed into a filthy slum with over a dozen others, sometimes couldn't even find a spot to sleep, and had gone days without eating. He'd even secretly eaten leftover grass from horse troughs to survive. But he valued his freedom above everything. After Brown stepped forward and I paid him on the spot, Jed rushed over to sign up. He was young and strong, so he made the cut. Shiloh led Jed's group out of the city toward Hope Town, a 3-hour walk. Along the way, something clearly shook the new recruits. They passed my fields where some of the older workers were chatting, laughing, even sitting down to rest. Shiloh didn't say a word about it. In any other territory, serfs would be working in silence like zombies, and the knights would be cracking whips. Here, people were smiling. Jed and the others overheard the old farmers talking among themselves. They complained that their sons had moved to the orchards and didn't want to farm anymore, leaving the field work to them. But even those complaints came with gratitude. They praised me for making sure nobody went hungry anymore. For someone like Jed, who'd nearly starved to death multiple times just to keep his freedom, seeing serfs who were happier and better fed than he'd ever been must have turned his whole world upside down. Shiloh brought the 15 new workers to the castle and left them outside while he fetched Robert. Robert took one look at the exhausted group and frowned. They hadn't eaten lunch. He ordered Shiloh to bring out a basket of leftover white bread rolls. The workers couldn't believe it. These people normally ate black bread made from bran and chaff. White bread was a luxury they could only afford on holidays. They swarmed the basket, stuffing rolls in their mouths and clutching extras in both hands. After eating, Robert picked locations on the town map and put them to work. By sunset, they'd built 2 decent thatched houses. Their craftsmanship was actually pretty good. When I got back and saw the finished houses, I was pleased. Robert asked how to handle pay since they'd only worked half a day. I told him full pay, 50 copper each, and a silver coin for anyone who'd brought along someone they knew. That earned me a reputation point from each of them. 50 copper for 1 point, a solid deal. While they were feeling good, I made my pitch. I told them they could see how things worked here. Honest work for honest pay. If they joined my territory as citizens, they'd get even better compensation and a better life. One of them, Brown, asked if I meant becoming serfs. I said no. They'd be citizens, still free. They wouldn't have to sell themselves to me. If they ever wanted to leave, they could, but I'd need to use magic to erase their memories of our trade secrets. Nobody committed on the spot. Brown said they'd give me an answer tomorrow. That was fine. I took them to the castle for dinner. Mrs. Allen had prepared 2 big pots in the courtyard, one with cabbage and pork stew, the other full of steaming white rolls. Some of them said they hadn't eaten meat in 10 years. They ate with their bare hands, cheeks bulging. More reputation trickled in. I went upstairs to my own dinner and checked my system panel from the window. I was at 3,618 out of 12,000 reputation for 3rd rank, and my population had already jumped to 232 out of 2,000. Those 20 workers had apparently developed a sense of belonging to Hope Town without even formally agreeing yet. That night, down in the thatched house, I couldn't hear them, but the system told me what happened. Brown and Jed were talking in the dark. Jed said he liked it here, but wasn't sure about giving up his freedom. Wasn't being a citizen just being a serf with a nicer name? Brown countered by asking what would happen once I had enough workers and stopped hiring. Then he shared what he'd learned from my existing citizens. They worked in the orchards doing easier jobs, ate better food, including 2nd-rank magical beast meat, and could get promoted to supervisors earning a full silver coin a day. Brown called this place paradise compared to their old lives. Jed agreed. Late that night, lying in bed, I suddenly saw the notification. Reputation 10 from Brown, 10 from Jed. I stared at it, confused. What had I done to earn their loyalty while I was just lying here? The next morning, Robert proudly showed me a dragon rib bone he'd picked out and polished, about 1.5 meters long, smooth as white jade. He suggested I craft it into a bow for the expansion war. I'd actually planned to do that, but had been too busy. I gave him a raise for the thoughtful gesture. Then everything went wrong. Green flames burst from the dragon skull's eye sockets. A deafening roar shook the room, and a ghostly shape rose from the shattered skull, the dragon's 3rd soul fragment. I'd already absorbed 2 into the unbreakable armor and dragon roar, but this was the strongest one, the heavenly soul. The armor hummed, and its spirit emerged. Dragon roar flew out of my ring on its own, blade drawn. Both spirits faced the dragon soul, but even together they felt weaker. The pressure was suffocating. Robert collapsed to the floor, trembling. The heavenly soul opened its mouth and sucked glowing particles from every bone in the room, absorbing all their essence. It blazed like a small sun. I squeezed my eyes shut. When I opened them, the soul had transformed into a 2-meter white dragon made entirely of bone. Every other skeleton in the room had crumbled to dust. I grabbed Robert and ran. If we kept fighting in the basement, we'd demolish the castle. The bone dragon smashed through a wall chasing me. I tossed Robert down on the 1st floor and sprinted outside. The dragon only cared about me. It caught up a few 100 meters out. Its claws slammed down on dragon roar so hard my feet sank into the earth. Then red light gathered in its mouth, dragon breath. I activated dragon form and launched myself skyward just in time. A pillar of fire scorched everything below for 80 meters. We fought in the air, claws against sword, metal ringing everywhere. One swipe broke through my guard and raked the unbreakable armor, cutting 3 deep gashes. Blood poured out. Even the armor's self-repair had slowed to a crawl. This thing was terrifyingly powerful, at least half the dragon's original strength. I tried what had worked before, tearing open my wounds and spraying my blood all over it. That's how I'd tamed the other 2 spirits. The bone dragon turned red, its expression twisting in what looked like pain and struggle. But then the color faded and it shook it off. My blood didn't work on the heavenly soul. I fired an explosive fireball, a massive one, over 1 meter wide. The dragon wrapped its wings around itself like a shield. The blast scorched the ground below into glass. When the flames cleared, the dragon was completely unharmed. Tina flew over using levitation magic, asking if I was okay. I told her to be careful. This thing was on another level entirely. I quickly explained to Tina what had happened. I'd just been picking out a rib bone for a bow when the 3rd soul fragment burst out of the dragon skull and absorbed all the essence from every bone in the room. Tina raised her wand. Linda and Jonathan arrived too. The bone dragon was smart enough to keep its distance, hovering 30 meters up. Tina struck first with Sky Wing Tornado, a massive funnel of wind 3 meters wide and 20 meters tall. It sucked the dragon in and shredded its wings. The dragon crashed into the ground, leaving a deep crater. I followed up with thunderstorm, raining lightning bolts through the tornado onto the dragon's body. Our spells didn't interfere with each other, maximizing the damage. Then a brilliant white light erupted from the storm's center. The dragon broke free, sending shockwaves through the earth. It looked rough, wings torn apart like shredded sails, body scorched and smoking, but still alive. Linda threw a seed that grew into a spiked cactus and launched black thorns at the dragon's face, forcing it to close its eyes and swat blindly. Under all our combined pressure, the dragon tried to run. Jonathan was already blocking its escape route, driving it back with sword energy. I unleashed 18 dragon palms. Just like during the original dragon fight, this technique terrified the creature. It froze in place, trembling. The energy dragon smashed into its chest, punching a gaping hole. The bone dragon sat there gasping, but since it was just a soul, the wound wasn't truly fatal. Tina asked what I wanted to do with it. I tried taming it with my blood again, slicing my wrist and spraying it. The dragon turned red and seemed to struggle, but then shook it off and lunged at me with killing intent. My blood just didn't work on the heavenly soul. The dragon went berserk, ready to take me down with it. Then something flew out from inside my armor. The red heart pendant grandmother Vitri had given me. It floated in the air, pulsed once, and released twin spirals of red and blue energy that formed a cage around the dragon. It couldn't move. The cage slowly shrank, pressing tighter and tighter. Red and blue threads cut into the dragon's body until they sank completely inside. The dragon went still. Its left eye burned red, its right eye burned blue. It was sealed. The pendant flew calmly back into my armor as if nothing had happened. An idea hit me. I pulled out the polished rib bone, now the dragon's only remaining bone. The white dragon shrank into a beam of light and dove inside. Strange red and blue symbols appeared across the bone's surface. I stared at grandmother's pendant. This family heirloom had just sealed a dragon's heavenly soul. There had to be deeper secrets behind it. I was thrilled. The heavenly soul had absorbed the essence of every dragon bone in the room. A bow made from this rib would be extraordinary. Tina gave me a long look, but didn't ask questions. The ground around us looked like a battlefield, cratered and scorched from 2 fights in 2 days. Back at the castle, Robert apologized for causing all this. I told him it wasn't his fault and asked him to get the basement walls repaired. Then I went back down to the storage room through the rubble-filled corridor, coughing through the dust. I cut a small piece of dragon tendon to use as a bowstring. A bow made from a bone containing the dragon's heavenly soul. I couldn't wait to see what kind of weapon that would turn out to be. Before heading to Mott City, the 20 free citizens came to the castle. Brown stepped forward and said they all wanted to become my citizens. I accepted, then gave them a new task: go back to Mott City and recruit friends and relatives. 20 copper coins for every person they brought in, no limit. Men or women welcome, but they had to be under 45, healthy, and hardworking. Even if I recruited all 2,000 people this way, it would only cost 4 gold coins. Nothing. Their eyes lit up. Bringing 2 or 3 people was easier than a full day's labor and paid almost as much. I sent Shiloh along to screen candidates and keep out anyone unfit. I wasn't running a charity. I needed people who could work. After a day's rest, Dragroot had recovered enough to ride, and we made it to Mott City in just over an hour. I dropped off the jam at the shop, locked up, and headed to the Jordan Manor. The shop was running smoothly without me now. I went straight to Master Daniel's forge. Brent ran into me on the way. Our father wanted me to visit the family library and pick out some powerful combat techniques for the expansion war. Brent stared at me and guessed I was about to make a bow from Dragonbone. I grinned and said he was right. In Daniel's workshop, I pulled out the polished rib bone with its red and blue runes. Daniel immediately recognized it was extraordinary. Brent joked that there couldn't possibly be a third soul fragment inside. He said he'd eat the bone if there was. I tapped the bone with my finger. Dragon cries echoed through the room, and white mist rose from the surface, forming into the complete white dragon with its red left eye and blue right eye. The pressure it gave off made Brent and the others struggle to breathe. Daniel was stunned. He'd never seen a soul fragment this powerful in decades of work. I explained it had absorbed the essence from all the other dragon bones. He put the pieces together. All 3 of the dragon's souls were now in my possession. Daniel said his old teacher had once crafted a dragon tooth weapon, but found no soul inside. Normally, a dragon's 7 lesser spirits scatter at death. The earth and human souls fade with time. Only the heavenly soul has a small chance of lingering in a specific organ. Having all three was unprecedented. Then Daniel remembered something from an ancient text. Dragon King bloodlines could prevent a subordinate dragon's souls from dispersing, even giving them a chance to resurrect someday. Brent immediately stared at me and asked if Daniel was suggesting I wasn't actually born into the Jordan family. Then he clapped his hand over his mouth like he'd uncovered some huge secret. I rolled my eyes at him. But thinking about Grandmother Vitri's heart pendant and its mysterious power, maybe the Jordan family's ancestors really did have some connection to Dragon Kings. Brent remembered his promise to eat the rib bone if it had a third soul. He looked at the bone, then at me, and nervously asked if I'd actually hold him to it. I said I'd never make him do that, not because I cared about him, but because I couldn't waste the bone. He had no comeback. I asked Master Daniel if he could forge the rib into a bow. He shook his head, but not because he lacked skill. He said the bone didn't need forging at all. If I was its master, I could communicate with the spirit through my mind and have it reshape itself. I touched the bone. Nothing happened. Daniel suggested using blood. I cut my wrist with Dragon Roar and dripped blood onto the bone. The red and blue runes drank it all up like a bottomless pit. In the room, the white dragon's eyes began spreading blood-red color across its entire body until it transformed into a red dragon. It looked at me deeply, then dissolved into the bone as a streak of light. I felt a connection form, a voice answering mine, just like with the unbreakable armor and Dragon Roar. I closed my eyes and pictured a bow. Brent gasped. When I opened my eyes, I was holding a magnificent longbow shimmering with rainbow light, covered in red and blue runes. The bowstring was a golden thread, soft to the touch. Brent demanded to know the special effects. I told him to brace himself. He scoffed, saying nothing could shock a 25-year-old man. Then I told him, 3 special effects. He fell straight to the floor. Even Daniel nearly collapsed. The first effect, it absorbs fire elements from the air to form energy arrows. No need to carry ammunition ever again. The second, I can pour battle energy or magic into it to create armor-piercing arrows with extreme penetrating power. I can even channel everything I have into a single shot. The third, same concept but creates explosive arrows instead of piercing ones. I named it the Skyfire Burst Bow. Dragon Roar and the unbreakable armor started trembling, seemingly jealous of the fancier name. The bow flared with red light and instantly shut them up. Daniel told his apprentice Grin privately that he had nothing left to teach him, and that he should follow me someday. He called me a child of fortune and said working with me could eventually push Grin toward becoming a divine craftsman. I dragged Brent to the training grounds to test the bow. Sam, the family guard captain, was running drills with his knights. I told him to clear everyone out so they wouldn't get caught in our sparring. He thought I was full of myself. His squad had 4 third-rank knights and over a dozen second-rank. I stood 50 meters from Brent, drew the bow, and felt almost no resistance pulling it to full draw. Red sparks gathered in under half a second into a 60-centimeter energy arrow. I released. The arrow streaked forward as a red blur. Brent flicked it away with his sword, but still had to step back twice from the impact. Sam and his knights stood there with their mouths open. Brent's assessment, about 4 times the power of a normal arrow, enough to threaten first-rank knights. That was already impressive, since knights' battle energy usually deflected regular arrows easily. I drew the string again. Get ready, brother. This time I'm using the armor-piercing arrow. I poured battle energy into the Skyfire Burst Bow and formed a sharp, dark gold armor-piercing arrow. Brent set up 2 layers of defense, a silver battle energy shield around himself, and a combat technique called Triangle Shield, a solid black barrier floating in front of him. I released the arrow. It moved so fast the human I couldn't track it. It punched clean through the energy shield, then pierced through the triangle shield, and kept going straight at Brent. Luckily, passing through 2 barriers had slowed it down enough for him to react. He caught it on his sword tip, and the arrow dissolved. But the impact still pushed him back 7 or 8 steps. He shouted asking how much power I'd used. I held up 2 fingers, 20%. His face went pale. As a magic warrior, if I used all my battle energy and magic together, that was 10 times the power. He didn't want to think about what that would do. Sam the guard captain was shaking. He realized my warning about accidental injuries hadn't been a joke. A full power shot would kill even a third-rank knight instantly. While Brent's shields were still fading, I tested the explosive arrow. This one was thick as a baby's arm, with flames burning at the tip. It flew much slower, wobbling through the air. When it hit Brent's shield, the explosion sent fire and shockwaves 4 or 5 meters out. The energy shield popped like a bubble. The triangle shield cracked like a spiderweb and shattered into gray dust. Brent stood there stunned. Sam's entire squad looked like statues. So now I understood all 3 effects. Energy arrows were weak but unlimited. I could fire 10,000 without getting tired. Armor-piercing arrows were fast with incredible penetration, perfect for single targets. Explosive arrows were slow but devastating against fortified positions or groups. What I needed now was practice on accuracy, since my body's original archery training was barely beginner level. Brent's face flushed red, and he demanded to know where he could find a dragon to kill. I told him to calm down. We needed a 6th rank knight and a 4th rank mage plus many others just to barely take down one dragon. He looked like he wanted to cry. Dragon roar, the unbreakable armor, and now the skyfire burst bow. Any single one would make someone jealous, and I had all 3. We headed to the family library next. The first floor had 2 rows of shelves filled with thick books, generations of ancestors' writings on battle energy cultivation methods and tips. I skipped all of it. My leveling came from the system's reputation points, so traditional training manuals were useless to me. Upstairs had 1 shelf of thin combat technique manuals, 128 in total. Brent proudly announced he'd mastered 18. I flipped through them quickly, tossing most aside after a single glance. Brent complained about my standards being too high. Then I felt something. I crouched down and looked at the very bottom of the shelf. Sitting alone on the lowest level was a single combat technique manual. The manual was old and falling apart, its pages curled and dusty. The faded cover read, Cloud Shatter Dragon Break. Brent tried to warn me off. He said it was passed down from our family's founder, and for hundreds of years, every talented member of the Jordan family had tried to learn it. Every single one failed. I opened the first page. Instantly, a flood of information poured into my mind. I found myself standing in an endless void surrounded by stars. A red figure made of fire hovered before me, winged, with dragon horns, about 2.5 meters tall with a perfect build. It demonstrated the technique with a commanding voice, forming claws that shattered red clouds and tore cracks in space itself, then crushed a 50-meter asteroid into dust with one strike. When I snapped back to the library, the method was branded into my memory. The technique had 3 levels. This manual was incomplete, only 2 levels recorded. I'd learned the first instantly. The second was too advanced for me right now. Brent waved his hand in front of my face, asking what was wrong. When I told him I'd already learned the first level, his eyes went wide. As the family heir, he knew secrets our father had shared. This technique came from the Jordan founder and was supposed to have 3 levels, with the 3rd lost to time. He couldn't believe I'd grasped it just by looking. He begged me to demonstrate, but the mental drain had left me exhausted. I needed rest. After leaving the library and saying goodbye to Brent, I went to check on Shiloh's recruiting efforts. What I found was chaos. In just 1 hour, hundreds of people had shown up to sign on. The referral bonus of 20 copper coins had spread like wildfire among the free citizens. Shiloh was overwhelmed, sitting at a table in the square surrounded by crowds 3 layers deep, shouting for people to form a line. While I was taking this in, trouble arrived. Howard Hughes, son of Viscount Gandalf Hughes, had recently reached 3rd rank knight and was feeling full of himself. He'd come to the square to hire 100 workers at 40 copper a day. He announced his offer using battle energy amplification, expecting the commoners to come crawling. Nobody even looked up. They were all too busy trying to sign up for my 50 copper deal. Howard was furious. He smashed through the crowd with a blast of energy, stormed up to Shiloh's table, read our sign, and slammed the table to splinters. He screamed that we were ruining the market. When Shiloh talked back, Howard slapped him across the face and kicked him to the ground. Then he recognized the name Hope Town, my territory. He marched toward Shiloh again, his giant hand raised for another blow. That's when I grabbed his wrist and held it tight. "You want to hit my people?" I said coldly. "Did you ask my permission first?" Howard tried to yank his hand free and couldn't. The shock on his face was priceless. I let go and he stumbled backward. He called me nothing, said even Brent wouldn't dare talk to him like that. I told him he was just a freshly promoted 3rd rank nobody. He drew his sword. I released my aura to push back the crowd of free citizens. These were my future people, and I didn't want any of them getting hurt. Howard charged, I deflected his thrust with Dragon Roar, nudged it aside with barely any effort, and kicked him hard in the back. He staggered forward, spun around, and fired a blade of sword energy at me. Dragon Roar shattered it like smoke. I counterattacked with an explosive fireball. He blocked with his own combat technique. The collision sent fire and sword energy flying everywhere. Using the blast as cover, I rushed him. He blocked my sword. Our raw strength was roughly equal. But then I ran lightning through Dragon Roar. Howard's body seized up, twitching all over. I kicked him square in the chest. He flew backwards, spitting blood, skidding across the ground. He couldn't believe it. He assumed I was first rank. I told him he was wrong. His eyes went wide when he realized I was second rank. I cast Thunderstorm above his head. Dozens of lightning bolts swallowed him. When they cleared, he was standing inside a transparent shield, a protective magic item that had activated automatically. The shield flickered and vanished, and a pendant on his chest crumbled to dust. Expensive one-time use gear. Better than the junk Anthony had used. Howard went all out. He activated a speed technique called Burst Step, turning into a blur of afterimages. I poured both battle energy and magic into Dragon Roar and fought on instinct, tracking his movements through sheer focus. We exchanged over 100 blows in seconds, the stone ground beneath us cracking from the sword pressure. We clashed full force and both flew back. Howard's sword, a weapon he'd carried for over a decade, was covered in chips and practically ruined. That made him even angrier. He unleashed his strongest technique, Wind Sword Song, with every ounce of battle energy he had. Silver light erupted from his blade, cold particles swirling everywhere. I answered with Cloud Shatter Dragon Break, the Jordan family's ancestral technique that nobody had been able to learn for centuries. My hand became a claw. Red lightning danced in my palm. Crimson clouds split apart in front of me. The very fabric of space cracked in hairline fractures. We charged at each other. The energy storm shattered the stone ground into a web of cracks. His silver sword energy scattered. His blade snapped. A red dragon claw grew larger and larger in his terrified eyes. Magic defense items on his body activated one after another, 5 in total, each shattering in turn. By the time they were all gone, my technique had burned out too. My palm hovered right in front of his face. I slapped him on the forehead. He tumbled backward and sat there on the ground, hair wild, eyes unfocused. A third-rank knight, defeated. I turned to Shiloh. Go slap him. Howard screamed that Shiloh wouldn't dare. I pulled the Skyfire Burst bow from my ring, poured every drop of battle energy and magic into it, and formed a full-power armor-piercing arrow aimed directly at his skull. Try me, I said. Howard went pale. He could feel the death in that arrow. Shiloh happily trotted over and slapped Howard across the face, leaving a bright red handprint. Howard screamed that the Hughes family would be my enemy forever. I let the arrow fly, deliberately grazing past his head, cutting a thin line of blood on his cheek. I shrugged and said, "Oops, missed." The arrow dissolved 100 meters out under my mental control. Howard's pants were suddenly wet. He'd pissed himself. For that one instant, he truly believed he was about to die. I told him to get lost. He scrambled to his feet and ran, looking back over his shoulder every few steps in case I drew the bow again. Once he was far enough away, I'm sure he was already plotting revenge. But right now, he was just another joke in Mott City. Shiloh called me amazing. I told him to help me sit down. The truth was, I'd burned through every last drop of battle energy and magic on that final arrow. It looked terrifying, but if I'd actually missed, I would have been completely defenseless. I'd never gamble like that unless I had no other choice. I asked Shiloh how recruiting was going. He reported 403 applicants, trimmed to 367 after cutting the old, lazy, and unfit. I told him to keep going. The crowd surged back even bigger than before. They'd all just watched me beat a third-rank Viscount heir and stand up for my own knight. A strong leader who protected his people. Where else would they find that? Men pushed forward offering their strength. One guy brought his pretty cousin who could cook and sew. I told Shiloh to record each person's skills so we could assign them properly later. With this many mouths to feed, we'd need women who could cook, not just misses. Alan alone. By midday, we'd recruited over 540 people. I led the whole group back to Hope Town, a massive column of humanity marching 3 hours down the road in 20 neat lines, each following the person who'd recruited them. The guy who'd brought the most had found 70 people, earning himself 14 silver coins. Even the one with the fewest recruits got 160 copper, 3 days' wages for just talking to friends. I told Mrs. Allen to prepare food in advance. When we arrived, the smell of fresh white bread rolls hit everyone from far away. 2,000 rolls were ready. Linda and Tina had helped with magic to get them done in time. The new arrivals lined up orderly, 3.5 rolls each, no shoving. Most of them were just happy to eat white bread at all. I promoted yesterday's 20 workers to supervisors, each managing the people they'd personally recruited. Then I led everyone to the building site. With over 500 people working together, cutting trees and hauling materials, we built 40 more houses before dark. From a distance, it was starting to look like an actual village. I paid everyone full wages even though they'd only worked 3 or 4 hours. 2 people could split a silver coin, which was the whole point of setting the wage at 50 copper. They lined up while Shiloh checked names off the roster to prevent double dipping. Nobody tried anything. These were good people. Paying out the day's wages earned me 560 reputation points. The math was clear. More citizens meant more reputation. If I had 10,000 people, I could earn 10,000 points in a single day and jump straight to 3rd rank. I paid Brown his 14 silver coins for bringing 70 people. That alone gave me 30 reputation points from him. I honored every referral bonus, earning another 200 points total. Reputation came from genuine gratitude, not the amount of money. So sometimes people who got paid more gave less reputation than others. Between the shop and recruitment, I was pulling about 1,000 points a day. At this pace, once I hit 2,000 citizens, I could reach 3rd rank within 2 weeks. That night, I gathered everyone around the campfire and announced a new offer. Each person could bring 5 more friends or relatives, earning a silver coin reward. I wanted to go beyond the system's 2,000 target, up to 3,000 at most. Any more, and I couldn't afford to feed them. The crowd erupted in cheers. Next morning, I left the knights and servants at the castle to prepare food. Today's arrivals would push past 2,000, too many for Mrs. Allen alone. I personally led the 500 workers back to Mott City. After beating Howard so badly yesterday, I expected retaliation and didn't want to leave Shiloh alone. At the square, I sent everyone off to find their contacts. Within an hour, over 1,000 people showed up. After screening, 900 qualified. People were dragging cousins and uncles in, saying whatever it took to earn their 20 copper referral bonus. I even made exceptions for useful specialists. One old blacksmith who exceeded the age limit got in because his skills were too valuable to turn away. I was nearly dozing off at the table when I felt something that jolted me wide awake. A thin, middle-aged man stood nearby, radiating pressure like a mountain. Every step he took made my heart pound. It was Gondov Hughes, Howard and Anthony's father, and a 5th-rank knight. The brat had called his daddy. He demanded I kowtow 3 times in public to make amends for humiliating his son. I told him to keep dreaming. He flared his aura, shattering the chair underneath me. I stayed sitting in the same position, mid-air for a moment before landing on my feet. My own father was also 5th rank, and our families were equals in power. I had no reason to be afraid. He said he'd discipline me on my father's behalf and grabbed for my shoulder. I went all out immediately, dragon form activated, wings spread, and I jumped back over a dozen meters. But he followed like a shadow. We moved to an empty part of the square in just a few breaths. I drew Dragon Roar and thrust at his palm. The sword tip hit his bare hand and stopped cold. It couldn't push through at all. I hit him with lightning through Dragon Roar, but a dark shield appeared on his palm and blocked it completely. He said that trick might work on others, but not on him. His other hand came at me. I barely got my sword up to block, but his fingers curled into claws and raked across my body, leaving 5 bleeding gashes. I poured magic into my wings and flew back as fast as I could. Close quarters combat against this man was suicide. His bare hands were sharper than most weapons. The unbreakable armor healed the claw marks in seconds. That caught his attention. He muttered about self-repairing armor. His nails could cut through metal, so damaging it hadn't surprised him. The healing did. I launched everything I had. Thunderstorm, dozens of lightning bolts. Explosive fireball. Fire vortex. The heat warped the air itself. When the smoke cleared, Gondov stood there without a scratch. Not even his robes were singed. The gap between a 2nd-rank magic warrior and a 5th-rank knight was staggering. When I'd fought alongside the 6th-rank knight against the dragon, I hadn't understood what true power felt like. Now, facing it head-on, I understood completely. He vanished. I tried to fly higher, but something clamped around my ankle. I looked down and saw his smirking face. He yanked me from the sky and slammed me into the stone ground hard enough to shatter the paving. Then he stepped on my wing. The pain was blinding. Meanwhile, Shiloh had slipped away to get help. He reached the manor, but my father wasn't there, only Brent. When Brent heard what was happening, he was furious that a grown man would attack a kid. But as they rushed out, Howard was waiting at the gate with a squad of knights, blocking their way. Gandalf had planned everything. He'd waited until my father left the city. He threw me over a dozen meters. I tumbled and barely caught myself. He taunted me about the bow. I spat and told him he wasn't worth wasting it on. Even a full-power armor-piercing arrow probably couldn't hurt him, and at his speed, I'd likely miss anyway. He confirmed my father wouldn't be coming. Fine. If he wanted to play, I'd play. I unleashed Cloud Shatter Dragon Break, the Jordan ancestral technique. Red clouds split apart before me, space itself cracking. I abandoned all defense and charged straight at him with everything I had. The look in my eyes made even a 5th-rank knight flinch for a split second. He answered with Aurora Thousand Shatterclaws. Silver light blazed from both his hands, radiating a terrifying cutting pressure. We collided. I was blown back dozens of meters instantly, my hands torn open to the bone, blood everywhere. He barely moved. He said I should be proud that a 2nd rank could survive one of his attacks. I coughed up blood and told him we weren't done yet. I got up fast. One arm gathered a silver energy dragon. Fire elements formed an explosive fireball in front of me. Then I looked at Dragon Roar. The sword spun on its own, wrapping a 2nd energy dragon around its blade. Gandalf's jaw actually dropped. A weapon that could cast combat techniques by itself was beyond anything he'd seen. I called it my ultimate move, twin dragons playing with Pearl. 2 18-dragon palms energy dragons twisted together, their heads pushing the fireball forward in a spinning attack. It burned through nearly every drop of battle energy and magic I had left. Even Gandalf felt the danger. He formed hand seals and thrust his fingers forward. Dark energy swirled. A massive black door appeared before him, lined with purple-gold patterns, radiating cold. Combat technique, Gate of the End. My twin dragons slammed into that eerie door. For one instant, the sky went dark. The collision tore up the ground for a huge area. Sword energy and fire raged everywhere. Gandalf's dark door cracked slightly. His hair got messy and his robes tore, but he wasn't really hurt. My twin dragon's attack, everything I had, barely scratched him. He came at me again. I pulled out the Skyfire burst bow and aimed it at him. He skidded to a stop and jumped back. But then he realized I was bluffing. I had nothing left inside. No magic, no battle energy. The bow was just to buy myself a few seconds to run. He chased me down easily. I was drenched in cold sweat, certain I was done for. Then a voice thundered, "Stop!" and a figure appeared in front of me. Silver battle energy clashed with Gandalf's hand, knocking him back over a dozen steps. It was Kinzart, the princess's 6th-rank knight. I nearly collapsed with relief. With him here, Gandalf wouldn't dare touch me. Kinzart asked what was going on. Gandalf immediately changed his story, claiming he'd just been sparring with me. I called him shameless. Kinzart asked if I wanted him dealt with. I said absolutely yes. A 6th-rank knight against a 5th rank was total domination, and Gandalf couldn't fight back because of Kinzart's royal status. Within minutes, Gandalf was lying on the ground with a swollen, bruised face. Kinzart explained why he'd returned. The princess's goods had sold out before they even reached the capital. They'd been selling along the road. She'd sent him racing back for more. He led me into my shop and dumped a mountain of gold coins on the floor. 6,000 total. He wanted 3 tons of dragon meat, with the rest going toward jam. The amount included the 1,120 gold they still owed from last time, funded through the princess's trade guild branches and cities along the route. I slid off my chair and climbed onto the pile of gold, scooping up handfuls and letting them rain down just to hear the clinking. I'm not greedy, but seeing that much wealth in front of me was pure joy. I started counting, but lost track somewhere around 57 or 5,800 when Shiloh walked in and froze. He reported that 2,900 people had signed up, with 2,500 qualifying after screening. I tossed him a gold coin for his hard work, 30 reputation points from that alone, and told him to take everyone back to Hope Town. Kinzart and I headed out to get the dragon meat. At the city gate, he mounted his white royal stallion, a horse with unicorn bloodline that could cover 2,000 miles in a day. I summoned Dragroot. As we rode, Kinzart noticed his elite horse was running flat out, while Dragroot looked like he was barely trying. He challenged me to a race, 5 gold coins to the winner. I asked if he was sure. He said yes. The moment the words left his mouth, Dragroot's hooves erupted in red flames, and he vanished down the road in a blur. Kinzart just stared at the empty road ahead of him. Dragroot went all out and made it back to Hope Town in 35 minutes. I'd wanted him to slow down and let Kinzart save face, but the stubborn beast wouldn't listen. We waited at the road for 20 minutes before the 6th-ranked knight finally showed up, his royal white horse panting and steaming. Dragroot snorted at it with contempt. Kinzart paid up his 5 gold coins without complaint. I told him I'd cook him a dragon meat feast personally. He was surprised a noble would know how to cook. I tied on an apron, sliced the meat into small pieces, skewered them on bamboo sticks, and roasted them over magic fire. No smoke, perfect temperature control, impossible to burn. I sprinkled cumin and salt, then used a little battle energy to blow the seasoning evenly into the meat. Kinzart devoured everything. Dragon meat skewers, sweet and sour dragon meat, fennel dragon meatballs, scallion fried dragon meat, 10 dishes total, all gone. He gave me 50 reputation points along the way. He said even the royal chefs in the capital couldn't compare. I smiled. These were just basic Chinese recipes from my past life. If an actual 5-star chef were here, Kinzart would never leave. The meal used 5 pounds of dragon meat, exactly matching the 5 gold coins he'd lost in the race. We were even. Down in the cellar, Kinzart noticed the smashed wall. I casually mentioned that the dragon's heavenly soul had absorbed all the bone essence and burst through it. He said I was lucky and warned me not to waste bones with soul fragments, since they could produce special weapon effects. I told him I'd already made the weapon. He assumed I meant dragon roar with its battle cry. I shook my head. That was from the human soul in the dragon form. He guessed the unbreakable armor was the heavenly soul. Wrong again. That was the earth soul in the dragon hide. Then I pulled out the Skyfire Burst bow. All 3 souls, heaven, earth, and human, were mine. Kinzart could barely breathe. He reached toward the bow, but red and blue energy spirals erupted from it and pushed him back several steps. He was shaken. He said even the strongest warrior in the Eagle Kingdom, an 8th-rank knight, didn't possess power like that seal. I pretended not to know where the seal came from, saying it appeared when the heavenly soul activated. I wasn't about to reveal the heart pendant. That was a Jordan family secret. But based on his reaction, whatever power was in that pendant far exceeded even 8th rank. It had to be something from our ancestors. Kinzart stared at the bow, wanting desperately to touch it, but too scared to try again. Finally, he turned away and told me to put it away before he lost his mind. In the dragon meat storage room, each barrel held 50 pounds. He trusted me enough to skip weighing and asked for 120 barrels, 3 tons total. I counted out 120 barrels of dragon meat for Kinzart, and he stored them in his spatial ring. Outside, Shiloh had brought back over 3,000 free citizens. They covered the ground in front of the castle like a sea of people, all munching on white bread rolls. Kinzart couldn't understand why I bothered with all this. With 6,000 gold coins, I could live in luxury for decades without lifting a finger. Why develop a territory? Why care about commoners? I just smiled and didn't explain. He wouldn't understand that everything I'd built depended on these people. At the orchards, Kinzart remarked that my workers were the most hard-working he'd ever seen. Nobody needed to be forced, they just did their jobs. I told him it was simple. I paid them, gave them something to hope for. Other nobles lived lavishly while refusing their serfs a single copper coin. I had Dean, the man I'd rescued from Anthony, bring out 400 jars of each jam flavor. He'd become the orchard manager at 1 silver coin per day and ran the place perfectly. Kinzart packed everything into his ring. Then I took him to see the crocodiles. I dripped blood into the water and 15 of them swarmed in. They'd grown to 60 centimeters now, covered in thick red scales, a mutation from absorbing my blood. They had the strength of apprentice knights already. Kinzart was stunned when I petted one on the head, and it just enjoyed it. Their blood had even turned warm. I mentioned I'd feel bad slaughtering them once they grew up. Kinzart looked at me like I was an idiot. Why kill them when I could use them as war mounts? He pointed out that the kingdom's elite falcon corps only rode 2nd-rank lion eagles. My mutated iron-armored crocodiles could potentially reach 3rd rank. Amphibious, powerful, perfect for both ambushes and frontal assaults. I could build an entire knight corps around them. I slapped my forehead. He was absolutely right. I'd been thinking of them as livestock when they were actually the foundation of a future army. Kinsart sighed that everything good seemed to happen to me. I told him it wasn't luck. What other noble would come out here every day to bleed into a ditch for a bunch of cold-blooded reptiles? Most would have boiled the eggs into soup on day one. The difference was knowing an opportunity when you see one. He nodded and admitted I was unlike any noble he'd ever met. Before leaving, Kinsart gave me a mysterious smile and said we'd meet again soon. He rode off on his white horse, trailing dust. After he left, I inspected the work site. Over 3,000 people were scattered everywhere with no coordination. Shiloh admitted he couldn't manage this many. He was just a young knight with no leadership experience. I cupped my hands around my mouth, amplified my voice with battle energy, and shouted for everyone to come to me. The free citizens swarmed over when I called, standing around with zero discipline. I needed to fix that fast. I called out 3 names, Brown, Songi, and Hank. I promoted them to supervisors at 3 silver coins a day. The announcement hit the crowd like a bomb. Everyone stared at those 3 with envy. I chose them for 3 reasons. They worked hard and fast, they had respect among the others, and, though nobody knew this, the system showed they generated more reputation than the rest. Then I told them they could each nominate 5 squad captains and 15 team leaders over the next few days. Squad captains would earn 2 silver a day, team leaders 1 silver. The crowd went wild with whispers. Everyone suddenly wanted to prove themselves. A few minutes later, I raised my hand, and the whole place went silent. I split them into 3 groups. Hank's 1,000 would cut trees, Songi's group would weave vines, Brown's people would build houses. They threw themselves into work like they'd been injected with energy. The dirtiest, hardest jobs got fought over. Efficiency multiplied several times over. I leaned against a tree chewing on a grass root, completely relaxed. Shiloh watched me in amazement. He said he'd never have figured out something so clever. By giving the 3 supervisors the power to recommend leaders, nobody resented their promotion. Instead, everyone was competing to impress them and earn a nomination. Simple incentives had transformed a chaotic mob into a workforce. By dark, in just 2 hours, they'd built 300 thatched houses. Basic, wood frames with straw roofs, but the free citizens were thrilled. Straw on the floor for a bed was already better than the slums they came from. That night, thousands gathered around dozens of campfires eating white bread. People were already sucking up to the 3 new supervisors, offering them food and reminding them of old friendships. When I came out, I handed each supervisor their 3 silver coins in front of everyone, then opened the line for daily wages. Shiloh stood ready with his roster. 3,000 people formed 3 lines. It took an hour and a half. I earned 2,950 reputation points. Massive, though some repeat workers who'd been paid before no longer generated any. The returns would keep declining over time, but getting me to 3rd rank wasn't going to be a problem. Late that night, I checked my system panel. Reputation, 7,612 out of 12,000. The population task was done, 3,272 people in Hope Town against the 2,000 target. I'd gone over because Kinsart's gold had removed any budget worries. I claimed my reward. A dark vortex appeared and white paper pages floated out, 200 total. 100 pages of brick kiln blueprints and 100 pages of brick-making techniques, including mineral recipes and step-by-step processes. The materials were specific to this world's magic minerals, completely different from the red bricks I knew from my past life. The paper itself was finer than anything made here. I wondered what civilization had produced these blueprints. Maybe someday, when I was the strongest person on this continent, I'd finally understand the system behind all of it. With only about 4,300 reputation points left to go, 3rd rank was just days away. I slept wonderfully and woke up late. After breakfast, I was sunbathing by the window when Tina came over, sweaty and annoyed, complaining that she'd been working non-stop while I relaxed. I promised to assign some women from the free citizens to handle cooking duties so she wouldn't have to keep using wind magic to knead dough for thousands of people. She asked what I planned to do with all these recruits. I told her the territory needed labor. She pointed out that once everyone had a house, there'd be nothing left to do. The orchards were already at Linda's magical limit, so more workers wouldn't increase fruit production. I smiled and told her not to worry. I had plans. My real strategy was to use the house-building phase to observe everyone, weed out the bad ones, and slowly introduce the reliable people to more important work. I also needed to identify people with management skills and construction talent. Over the next 3 days, I practiced archery on wild rabbits and supervised the workers. They were all competing furiously to be nominated as squad captains or team leaders, so nobody slacked off. They cleared an entire forest and built over 1,500 thatched houses. From a distance, it looked like a proper village. I named it Sunrise Village. In the center, I set up 30 houses as dining halls, staffed by 20 women for 3 daily meals, plus 5 people handling food purchasing. On the 4th morning, I gathered everyone and announced the leaders I'd selected. 15 team leaders and 5 squad captains. The chosen 20 were overjoyed. At that exact moment, the system ticked over. Energy surged through my body like a rushing river. 3rd rank Magic Warrior. I checked my panel, 92 out of 50,000 for the next rank. 4,300 points had come in over 3 days from my citizens. Reaching 4th rank would take 50,000, absolutely massive. Without recruiting way more people, it would take at least half a year. I dismissed the crowd but kept the 23 leaders behind. In a meeting room I'd set up with a round table, I laid things out plainly. What I was about to share involved core secrets that would shape Hopetown's future. Once they heard this, they had to swear absolute loyalty. Anyone who leaked information would be hunted down and killed, no matter where they ran. Anyone who wanted out could leave now. Nobody moved. Brown spoke for everyone. I'd given them dignity, food, warmth, and money. A few days here was happier than decades in Mott City. They'd follow me to the death. I spread out the town map and the brick kiln blueprints and manufacturing guides, copies I'd made with Tina and Linda's help, with the originals safe in my ring. I marked mineral deposits on the map and assigned tasks based on each supervisor's strengths. Hank would lead mining operations. He had experience from working mines as a free citizen. Songi was skilled at identifying and mixing rare metals, so he'd follow the brick recipe and produce a test batch. Brown had the most construction experience, so I gave him the enormous task of building the kiln itself from the blueprints. They stared at the documents, looking overwhelmed. Mining they understood, but bricks? Kills. They'd never heard of any of it. I explained simply. Bricks were blocks made from clay mixed with rare metals, baked hard, used instead of quarried stone for building castles and walls. A kiln was a facility for mass-producing them. This technology didn't exist anywhere else in the world, and it was going to change everything. After the leaders passed around the blueprints, they were speechless. They finally understood why I'd been so serious. In this world, every castle and city wall was built from stone quarried off mountains, irregular blocks that had to be hand-cut flat, painfully slow work. Bricks changed everything. Build walls as thick as you want, towers as tall as you want, without worrying about running out of stone. I pulled out 23 magical contracts prepared by Tina. 4th rank binding. If anyone leaked the brick-making process to outsiders, divine lightning would strike them down. I'd only known these people a few days. Loyalty is a beautiful word, but I wasn't naive enough to rely on it alone. The rank-and-file workers below them would follow orders without learning the core techniques. Brown went first, biting his finger and pressing a blood print. Everyone followed. I collected the contracts, dismissed the meeting, and told them no more house building. Real work started today. I'd chosen the far north of my territory for the kiln site. East bordered Anthony's land, south led to Mott City. West and north were barren wasteland, no one around. My long-term plan was to build a brick wall around the entire territory. Never again would bandits reach my front door undetected, and I wouldn't sell a single brick. The longer other nobles stayed ignorant of this technology, the better. Not until I was strong enough to protect it. 5 days later, Songi brought me the first batch, 100 test bricks. Each one was about 20 centimeters long and 10 wide, lighter than stone, but incredibly hard. I squeezed one with all my strength and barely left a shallow fingerprint. The shapes were uneven due to poor molds, but the material was excellent. I tested them thoroughly. Dragon Roar cut one in half, but with massive resistance. No ordinary weapon could do that. Lightning magic cracked the surface slightly, but the brick stayed usable. A fireball left it blackened, but completely intact. Physical and magical resistance were both outstanding. A wall made from these bricks could easily withstand a 3rd-rank knight's full attack. Even 4th or 5th-rank strikes, spread across dozens of bricks, would accomplish nothing meaningful. I told Songi to build proper molds so future bricks would be uniform, then sent word to Brown to start constructing the actual kiln. 20 days later, the kiln was finished, 200 meters of tunnel with 8 chimneys standing over 15 meters tall. Brown was beaming with pride. Each batch would produce about 80,000 bricks. Meanwhile, Hopetown was humming. The original residents ran the orchards, making jam for my Mott City sandwich shop and for Brent's expansion into other cities. The new citizens from the free citizen recruitment handled mining, brickmaking, and construction. I gave Brown his next assignment, the biggest one yet. Build a wall around all of Hopetown. 4 meters wide, 15 meters tall. On this dangerous continent, only high walls could keep my people safe. Brown nodded firmly, eyes burning with determination. He didn't see it as a burden. He saw it as purpose. Brent showed up at my territory to deliver a message from our father. The expansion war was in June, but we needed to leave in 2 days to reach the border city of Sorrow early. Nobles and knights from across the kingdom would gather there under the second prince's command to receive war banners. It was also a chance to network with nobles from other cities, even the capital. Then Brent spotted the leftover bricks from the kiln construction. He picked one up and tried his old trick, karate chopping it like he used to do with stone pillars to impress me when we were kids. His palm slammed down. The brick didn't budge. His hand turned red. Refusing to accept it, he channeled battle energy into his next strike. The brick sank into the ground from the force, but stayed perfectly intact. He even drew his sword and stabbed it with full power, just sparks and a shallow scratch. He practically ran over to me demanding to know which mountain these came from. I told him they weren't quarried, they were made from clay. His jaw dropped. He wanted to buy some. I quoted him 20 copper per brick. He nearly exploded, saying that even the entire Jordan family treasury couldn't build a castle at that price. I told him it was the friends and family discount. Normally, it would be 30. The bricks contained expensive rare metals, which was why they were so hard. In reality, once the kiln was running, each brick cost less than 1 copper to produce. But I didn't want him buying any. This technology needed to stay secret. Of course, if he insisted, I wouldn't mind making a fortune off my own brother. He got depressed about never having his castle dream come true. I told him dreams are worth keeping. Then he demanded dragon meat to soothe his broken heart. I held out my palm and asked for payment. He called me money obsessed. I told him I had thousands of mouths to feed. Without money, they'd all starve. He couldn't understand why I didn't just sell all the dragon meat, retire rich, and live comfortably forever. I didn't explain. The Edmund Society was a sword hanging over my head. We were locked in a fight to the death. If they weren't busy with other things right now, I'd already be gone. Money meant nothing if I wasn't strong enough to survive. I needed citizens for reputation, and the brick walls would be my first line of defense against whatever the black mages threw at me next. Back at the castle, I cooked Brent a pound of dragon meat. He sprawled in his chair, warm and full, daydreaming out loud about slaying another dragon someday, making his own dragon fang sword and dragon scale armor. I told him he didn't have to wait. I quoted prices: a dragon fang for 100 gold, 50 dragon scales plus a 2 square meter dragon hide for 130, full set for 230 gold. Without the 3 souls, Master Daniel couldn't forge anything with special effects, but it would still be genuine dragon fang and dragon scale equipment. Brent's breathing got heavy. His heart was pounding. Even without special powers, real dragon gear was every knight's dream. Brent knew the prices I'd given him were already a steal. Dragon materials like these were monopolized by top-tier nobles and never hit the open market. He was genuinely tempted but didn't have enough cash for the full set. He asked if he could pay for the fang up front and owe me for the scales and hide, paying it off over 3 years. I agreed, with 5% annual interest, bringing his total to 150 gold. He nearly choked, but signed the magical contract anyway. I reminded him to bring the down payment before I left for the war. After he stormed off, I dropped the smile and got serious. I sent Shiloh to gather all my key people: Randall, Songi, Brown, Hank, Dean, plus Robert, Jonathan, Tina, and Linda. Everyone crowded around the big round table on the 4th floor of the castle. I told them straight. I was leaving for the expansion war in 2 days. I'd be gone about 2 months, back around early August. Then I assigned responsibilities one by one. Robert would manage the castle and consult Tina on decisions. Jonathan would handle security and keep outsiders away from the orchards and kiln. Hank would keep mining. Brown would continue building the city wall. I told him I hoped for a surprise when I returned. Dean would ramp up jam production for incoming capital orders. It took 2 hours to cover everything. I asked Tina to stay behind after everyone left. Linda lingered at the door, her eyes bouncing between us, before finally walking out. Alone with Tina, I put 3,000 gold coins on the table, wages for the citizens, plus funds to handle the princess's trade shipments. Nobody else could be trusted with that much money. Tina took only 1,000 and told me to keep the rest. As long as Kinzart kept coming with payments, the money would hold. He'd already made another 5,000 gold purchase recently. My total assets now exceeded 11,000 gold coins. I patted her shoulder and told her to wait for me. She opened her arms. I hugged her briefly. Her face flushed red. She told me to stay safe. Thousands of people depended on me coming back alive. I assured her the expansion war was offensive, not defensive. Just small skirmishes where the winner took the loser's belongings. She reminded me about the Edmund Society lurking in the shadows, but I told her I'd be traveling with the entire Mott City noble contingent and linking up with forces from other cities. They wouldn't have an opening. Over the past month, I trained my archery until I could hit fast-moving rabbits over 80% of the time. No ordinary knight could dodge my arrows. But I couldn't afford to miss against high-rank opponents, especially with a full-power armor-piercing shot that would leave me completely drained. 2 days later, I woke early and had breakfast. Outside the castle, a crowd had gathered to see me off. Mrs. Allen handed me 200 steamed rolls for the road. Linda gave me a green leaf folded into a triangle, a good luck charm that would let me breathe underwater if I held it in my mouth. Jonathan saluted me formally. Tina said quietly that they'd all be waiting for my return. I summoned Dragroot, climbed on his back, waved goodbye to everyone, turned around, and rode off toward the war. I rode Dragroot hard and reached Mott City in 40 minutes. The atmosphere was different today. Knights in armor were leading war horses through the streets everywhere. At the manor, Brent greeted me grinning ear to ear. He'd rushed to buy the dragon fang the same day and had his sword forged already. He was showing it off, raving about how it cut through iron like butter. Then Dragon Roar flew out of my ring on its own, drew itself, and started fighting Brent's new sword. They clashed a dozen times before Dragon Roar wrapped itself in a stored energy dragon. I called it back. Brent stared at it longingly, and suddenly his brand new Dragon Fang sword didn't seem so impressive anymore. My father came out in gleaming silver armor with a wide sword and a red cape flowing behind him. He took one look at me and said it was time to go. When I summoned Dragroot outside the gates, Father's black warhorse nearly buckled, terrified by the dragon-blooded mount's pressure. I made Dragroot suppress his aura. Father glanced at Dragroot, and I could tell he felt outdone. His son's weapons, armor, and mount were all better than his. We waited for the other two Viscounts. Gandalf Hughes showed up with his second son Anthony. Their faces soured the moment they saw me. All three of them had been on the receiving end of my fists at some point. Steve White came with his daughter Manda. The three Viscounts led about 50 nobles out of the city, with another 20 still catching up behind us. Father mapped out the route, reached the secret forest by nightfall and camped by a river, stopped the next day at Nebula City, rest the day after in Flower Valley, where there were fruit trees, and arrive at the border city of Sorrow around noon on the fourth day. I couldn't help noticing how different Steve looked from his daughter. He was a pudgy middle-aged man. How did he produce someone as striking as Manda? She wore gold-trimmed silver armor with her hair tied back, looking every bit the warrior. She caught me staring and snapped at me. I quickly changed the subject and asked why she wasn't riding her prized greenscale horse. Her expression turned bitter, and she said it was partly my fault. Apparently, she and Dewey had spotted some dead bandits on the road once, the ones I'd killed. They bet on whether I was responsible. She lost, and the penalty was lending her horse to Dewey for a month. But instead of riding it, Dewey had bought 100 mares and forced the stallion to breed with them every single day to produce valuable offspring. When she got the horse back, its legs were so weak it could barely walk, let alone go to war. I looked down at Dragroot. Actually, that wasn't a bad idea. Breeding a few dragon-blooded horses could be useful. Even diluted bloodlines would be far superior to ordinary war horses. Dragroot shuddered beneath me and walked on in silence. The column moved at about 40 miles per hour, a leisurely stroll for Dragroot. At full speed, he could have reached Sorrow by tonight. I rode in the middle of the group, chatting with Manda to pass the time, and asked how many expansion wars she'd been through. Manda said this was her second expansion war. Her father had always said girls shouldn't fight, so he'd kept her home before. I nodded. With her violent temper, most men wouldn't dare pursue her. Only my body's previous owner had been enough of a masochist to have a crush on her. She caught the look on my face and immediately challenged me to a fight. The crowd parted, and several people shot me sympathetic glances. Manda was the best among our generation. She'd beaten plenty of young nobles, and none of them dared complain. I tried talking her down. I told her she'd never find a husband with that temper. She snapped that she'd never marry me anyway, and swung her sword. Dragon Roar unsheathed itself to block, and I grabbed the hilt with a grin. You started it. I opened with lightning through Dragon Roar. She leapt off her horse and dodged back, but I stuck to her like a shadow. She countered with Sword Light Break, surrounding herself in cutting sword energy. I answered with an explosive fireball, bigger than before, 1.5 meters wide. Since reaching 3rd rank, all my techniques had gotten significantly stronger. The blast sent her stumbling backward. Before she could recover, I cast Fire Vortex. The 2 fire spells stacked, trapping her in a spinning inferno. She gritted her teeth and wrapped herself in battle energy to endure the heat. Her golden hair started smelling burnt. I flew in through the vortex. She barely got her sword up. When our blades met, I overpowered her and kept pushing. She had no chance to counterattack. After a dozen exchanges, her sword flew from her hands. Dragon Roar hovered at her throat. You lose, I said calmly. Her voice trembled. She couldn't accept it. She'd always been the best, better than Dewey, better than Brent, far above Howard. She'd dominated every heir from the 3 Viscount families. And now she'd lost to a 16-year-old who hadn't even used his dragon form. She knew I'd been holding back. I did a flashy sword-sheathing move and told her we needed to catch up with the group. Anthony, who'd been watching and hoping to see me humiliated, went pale and looked away when I rode past. Steve White gave my father a loaded comment about raising a fine son. Father laughed and took full credit, claiming he'd always been strict with my education. He was as surprised as anyone. Manda caught up eventually, but rode at the very back, clearly upset. We pushed on without stopping, eating dry rations on horseback. By afternoon, we reached the edge of a vast forest, the burial forest. Trees 50 meters tall with trunks so thick 2 people couldn't wrap their arms around them. The canopy blocked all sunlight, making everything dark and eerie. Beast roars echoed in the distance. Father warned everyone to be careful. The forest was full of territorial magical beasts, his eyes lingering on me for an extra moment. We plunged in. The cold hit immediately. I stroked Dragrot's warm red mane as we followed narrow trails worn by previous travelers. I slowed down and rode alongside Manda, asking how long it would take to cross the forest. Manda said at our current pace, we'd be through the forest by tomorrow afternoon. She mentioned that last time they'd run into a wild boar and killed it on the spot. We rode for hours until sunset. The sound of running water led us to a clear river about 30 meters wide, full of small fish and shrimp. Father called for camp, too dangerous to keep moving in the dark. Everyone tied up their horses and lit campfires. Manda was toasting bread on a stick when she noticed me heading to the river. I stabbed Dragon Roar into the water and cast a low-power lightning spell. Dozens of palm-sized fish floated belly up. I gutted and scaled them quickly, skewered 4 per stick on 13 branches, then used a fireball to cook them while a wind spell kept them rotating above the flame. Manda stared. She'd never seen magic used for cooking before. When the smell of roasted fish spread, I sprinkled on salt and cumin from my ring. I bit into the first one. Perfect. Manda was watching so hard her eyes were practically burning holes in the fish. I asked if she wanted some. She nodded, then quickly shook her head, saying she didn't. I waved a skewer under her nose. She snatched it and stuffed her face. 2 reputation points from her. Anthony was drooling nearby. I offered him 1 for 8 silver coins. Manda said I was as much of a swindler as Dewey. I told her I was a noble personally cooking for them, so the service charge alone was worth more than that. Anthony paid up. Then other nobles crowded around wanting some too. I sold all 10 remaining skewers in minutes. Father was chewing dry bread in the distance, grumbling that his own son had forgotten him. Steve White suggested they split the night watch. Steve would take the first half, Father the second. I found a big tree, spread some leaves on the ground, and fell asleep watching the stars. Guard duty was the Viscount's problem. Sometime deep in the night, a warning flashed through my instincts. I snapped awake. 5 figures dropped from the canopy above me. Creatures with human bodies, but monkey heads, wearing leaf clothing and wielding gleaming daggers. I rolled sideways, dodging their strikes. Dragon Roar flew at one, but it was incredibly agile, backflipping out of the way. The other 4 surged forward with silver battle energy, all 3rd rank knight level. I activated dragon form. My body swelled, wings spread. I launched thunderstorm overhead. A ring of black clouds formed and dumped a dozen thick lightning bolts onto the 4 monkey men, charring them black. I shouted, "Enemy attack," to wake the camp. Father drew his sword and rushed toward me, but a dozen monkey men blocked his path. All around the perimeter, over 100 of them poured out of the forest surrounding our position. Most were 1st rank, but they outnumbered us 2 to 1. Our nobles were caught half asleep and struggling. My 5 opponents recovered from the lightning. They slashed their daggers, sending waves of cutting energy at me. I answered with twin dragons playing with Pearl. 2 energy dragons twisted together, pushing an explosive fireball forward, smashing through their attacks. The 5 3rd-rank monkey men grabbed vines and launched themselves into the trees, dodging my twin dragon's attack completely. The blast plowed through over a dozen thick trees, turning them to dust before fading. These creatures were incredibly agile. The forest was their home turf. Father called me over, but before I could fly to him, a terrifying buzzing filled the air. Swarms of giant wasps, each the size of a sparrow, poured out of the bushes. Black and yellow bodies, finger-length stingers. Our knights were already struggling against double their numbers in monkey men. Now wasps were stinging through every gap in their armor, raising welts the size of peaches. Worst of all, the wasps only attacked us. They completely ignored the monkey men. Even Father, a 5th-rank knight, had no good area attacks. He was reduced to swatting wasps one at a time with his sword. I cast Fire Vortex and moved through the camp, the spinning flames incinerating every wasp that came close without hurting our own people. A mage's area attacks were exactly what this situation needed. I was more effective against the swarm than all 3 Viscounts combined. Steve White slapped my shoulder hard enough to buckle my knees and thanked me. I blasted a group of 1st-rank monkey men with an explosive fireball, scattering them to pieces. The 5 3rd-rank ones had vanished. Once the wasps were handled, I turned things over to the Viscounts and started scanning the forest. Something was wrong. Both ambushes had targeted me specifically. These monkey men were probably artificial, monkey heads stitched onto human bodies, combining simian agility with human battle energy. If my guess was right, a black mage was controlling them from hiding. I spotted a faint magical pulse behind a massive tree trunk 200 meters away. I switched to the Skyfire Burst Bow, drew it with 10% battle energy, and fired an armor-piercing arrow. It punched clean through the tree. A figure in black robes stumbled out screaming. My arrow lodged in his left shoulder. I switched back to Dragon Roar and flew at him. He whipped around. Pale face, nothing but whites in his eyes, utterly creepy. He cast Gluttony Bugs, a cloud of tiny black insects that devoured everything they touched, eating leaves, branches, even chewing the ground 3 feet deep. I blasted them with Fire Wave. The bugs ignited and burned away in seconds. Fire was their natural enemy. I closed in for the kill, expecting an easy finish against a mage at close range. But he pulled a sword from behind his back. He was a magic warrior too, and from his battle energy, 4th rank. Our blades locked. His rotting face was inches from mine. I demanded to know why they kept trying to kill me when I'd never wronged them. He snarled that I was in the way. He exhaled black gas directly into my face. The stench was beyond anything, rotten, toxic, making my head spin instantly. I hit him with lightning through Dragon Roar. He convulsed, but I was already vomiting. We both jumped apart. First exchange, mutual damage. I was mildly poisoned. He was paralyzed. I told him his breath was the worst thing I'd ever smelled and asked if he'd ever brushed his teeth in his life. He just sneered and pulled out a black crystal sphere from his sleeve. A soul crystal ball. Black mist swirled, and something enormous materialized beside him. The creature he released had a tiger's body with 3 wolf heads, eyes glowing green. A 4th-rank spliced magical beast, far stronger than anything at its level naturally. All 3 heads locked onto me, drooling. Every instinct screamed at me to run. There was no way I could fight a 4th-rank magic warrior and this monster at the same time. I turned and flew. Steve White came barreling over like a rolling mountain of flesh, with Manda right behind him. She insisted on helping me fight. Steve tried to send her back, but she pointed out that with a 5th-rank knight nearby, she'd be fine. I asked Steve to handle the three-headed beast while Manda and I took the black-robed mage. Steve engaged the creature with his greatsword. The mage kept glancing toward that fight, but I forced his attention back to us. Dragon Roar swept in hard, while Manda launched Sword Light Break from the side. The mage answered with both a combat technique and dark magic simultaneously, sword in one hand, staff in the other. The resulting storm flattened trees all around us. I hit him with an explosive fireball. He conjured a black horn shield, a massive dark barrier topped with 2 bull horns. My fireball detonated against it and didn't even leave a mark. Then he charged forward using the horns as a battering ram. I flew up and slashed down at him, but Dragon Roar bounced off the shield without a scratch. Manda attacked his flank. He blocked her casually with his sword, overpowering her without even shifting his stance. The only thing that might pierce that shield was a full-power armor-piercing arrow, but I'd need at least 80% of my energy, and if I missed or didn't kill him, I'd be helpless. Steve was locked in a fierce stalemate with the three-headed beast. No help coming from that direction. I landed on top of the shield with both feet, driving the mage down. While he was pinned, Manda unleashed her strongest technique, Void Flash. A black crescent blade screamed toward him. He sneered and told her not to think he wouldn't hurt her, a strange thing to say. His counter technique, Void Sword Song, shattered her attack and kept going. Her defensive magic items broke one after another like paper. The purple energy sliced through her armor, drawing a bloody line across her body. While he was focused on Manda, I threw Dragon Roar in an arc behind him. The sword's spirit guided itself into his back and burst through his chest. He looked down in total shock at the bloody blade protruding from his body. He'd never expected a weapon that could attack on its own, and his own shield had blocked his view of my move. Dragon Roar started spinning inside him, trying to shred his organs. He screamed and slapped the blade out. I caught it and fired lightning at him. He coughed up blood and organ fragments, then howled, "Blood sacrifice." Blood seeped from every pore, covering him completely. He floated into the air, hair turning white. My lightning reached him and split apart on its own, curving around him harmlessly. I asked how he was still alive when I'd stabbed him through the heart. He grinned with glowing red eyes and said who told me hearts were always on the left side. He dropped his weapons, placed both hands together, and cast Blood Shadow thousandfold. Countless red skull phantoms materialized before him, reeking of blood, each one wailing, "Save me, save me," the tortured cries of trapped souls. The black mage pushed his hands forward and sent the flood of screaming skulls rushing at me. I activated Cloud Shatter Dragon Break, red lightning crackling in my claws. But instead of meeting the attack head-on, I turned my back, wrapped myself in my wings, and let the wave of skulls slam into me. The impact launched me like a cannonball, exactly what I wanted. My target was the three-headed wolf tiger, which was fighting Steve with its back to me. I arrived in an instant, slashed 2 heads off with my claws, and Dragon Roar flew in from above and pierced the third. The beast crashed down dead. I'd expected to just wound it and finish it off with Steve's help, but one strike had been enough. I told Steve we needed to deal with the black mage before Manda got hurt. We rushed back together. My wings were completely destroyed from tanking those skulls. Nothing but shredded scraps of flesh. The pain was blinding, but I pushed through. Manda was actually in better shape, since her magic defense items had absorbed most of the purple sword energy before it reached her. The 3 of us surrounded the mage. His expression flickered. Fighting me and Manda had already been tough. Adding a 5th-rank knight made it hopeless. He suddenly charged at Steve and threw black smoke into his face, stunning him momentarily. Then he ran. I pulled out the Skyfire Burst bow, poured every last drop of battle energy and magic into it, and fired. The armor-piercing arrow punched through 2 defensive shields like they were paper, then went clean through his skull. He stumbled forward a few steps and collapsed. Dead. My dragon form dropped. I nearly fell over, but Manda caught me. She asked if I was okay. I told her I'd live. The wings and the unbreakable armor together had absorbed the skull attack well enough. I was just completely drained. Steve finally snapped out of his daze. I couldn't resist pointing out that a 5th-rank knight almost letting a 4th-rank escape from right under his nose wasn't a great look. He laughed nervously and called it an accident. Manda helped me walk to the body. I checked his hands. No spatial ring. Disappointing. But I took his soul crystal ball, his sword, high quality, hadn't chipped against Dragon Roar, and his magic staff, which was nearly as good as Tina's. I give it to Linda. Father arrived with reinforcements. The monkey men had all been wiped out. Back at camp, over 100 monkey corpses littered the ground. Many of our knights were badly hurt from the wasp stings, but nobody had died. The 3 viscounts spent the night running between wounded knights, using battle energy to draw out the venom. It was going to be a long night. I lay in a small hollow in the ground, staring up at the stars, with Dragroot standing guard beside me. Tina had been right. The Edmund Society had attacked me on the road. One 4th-rank dark magic warrior with his creations had thrown our entire force into chaos, including 3 5th-rank knights. Even if this was everything the Society had stockpiled for years, the threat was serious. I couldn't sleep. The battle kept replaying in my mind. Then something clicked, and I sat up. How had over 100 monkey men approached our camp without any warning? These huge trees had thick canopies. The creatures must have been hiding up there long before we arrived, waiting for nightfall. But that meant the Black Mage had known our route in advance. He'd set up the ambush before we even entered the forest. How did the Edmund Society know exactly where we'd be?